28th, 2013. Could we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Donaldson?
Here.
Commissioner Moss has an excused absence this evening. Commissioner Sherman?
Here.
Commissioner Steinberg?
Present.
Commissioner Tan?
Here.
Vice Chair Cardoza?
Here.
And Chair Coomerly.
Here.
We have a quorum of 6 commissioners.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now is the time in the meeting when we invite the public to come up, and if they have any comments that are not relating to items on the agenda, please come forward and speak. Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment. And Charlie, may we have the action recap?
Yes, you have before you the action recap for the January 24th meeting for your consideration.
I move approval.
I second. Without objection, anyone?
Okay, that was moved by Vice Chair Cardoza and seconded by Chair Coomerly. Without objection?
Yep. Yes.
All right.
Okay, on to the director's report.
Okay, well, the City Council has met twice since your last meeting in January. Their meetings were on February 5th and 19th. On February 5th, they took a couple of actions related to the Center of Community Life. They passed 2 resolutions, one exempting the ECCL project from the city's art in public places requirement, that's the % for art requirement, and another exempting the project from the city's LEED Gold Green Building standards, but it should be noted that the California Building Code energy requirements, which this project will be required to comply with, are essentially equivalent to LEED Silver. The council heard an informational report on the Ambassador Housing Project in response to some concerns that had previously been raised by neighbors of that project. The report essentially concluded that the project was, in fact, being built in conformance with the plans that were approved by the Planning Commission. They passed on second reading on the consent calendar without comment the new planning regulations, and more about that in a second. And those will, of course, take effect next Thursday, a week from today, March 7th. And on February 5th, the council introduced an ordinance to move the municipal elections to even-numbered years and to extend the terms of all sitting council members by 1 year. That ordinance was then passed on second reading at their February 19th meeting. So there will be no municipal elections this year in 2013, as there normally would be. And the next one will be in 2014, and then in even number years after that. At their February 19th meeting, the council approved a contract with HQE for engineering and design services for the Star intersection improvements. That's at MacArthur, West MacArthur, San Pablo, and Adeline Street. And those are being funded by a $4.5 million Safe Routes to Transit grant. The council passed a resolution accepting the 2012 National Association of City Transportation Officials, or NACTO, Urban Bikeways Design Guide as an official city reference document. And then back to ECCL again. The City Council, sitting as the successor agency to the redevelopment agency, approved a payment of $21.2 million in bond proceeds for the Center of Community Life project. This was a 4-to-1 vote, with Councilmember Asher voting no. The council also unanimously authorized the city manager to submit a response to an RFP that the school district has issued for the joint occupancy of the ECCL facility. This is a formality that's required by the state law that allows cities to share facilities with school districts. That law requires the school district to issue an RFP and for the city to submit a proposal in response to the RFP. Of course, that whole deal has already been worked out through an MOU process. I'm not sure if it's finally nailed down, but the negotiations have been ongoing for quite a while. And finally, also sitting as the successor agency, the council approved a contract with Kaiser Marston for conceptual plans and property valuations for Site B of Bay Street as part of the state-mandated property management plan, which I told you about last month. And as I also noted last month, any future development on the site, on Site B, will, of course, have to come to the Planning Commission in the future for your approval. That's it for the council actions. I wanted to note that you have on the dais in front of you hard copies of a number of pages that were missing from your packets, for which we apologize. I previously emailed you the PDFs of these, so now you have the hard copies as well. As far as upcoming Planning Commission meetings, we actually, to make up for tonight, believe it or not, have nothing for the March 28th agenda. So unless any of you have some objection for some reason, we are planning to cancel the March 28th Planning Commission meeting. In April, however, on April 25th, we anticipate having the ECCL project before you for a decision. The school district has indicated that they hope to get the mitigated negative declaration published for the 30-day comment period sometime in the middle of March, and then to the school board for certification prior to your April 25th meeting so that you can take action on the project in April. And finally, last but not least, as promised, you all have in front of you a hard copy of our new planning regulations that we have all been working so hard on the last 3 or 4 years. I also emailed you earlier today a PDF of the same document, and it's got in the pocket in front the 5 maps, blow-up versions of the 5 maps that you can use. And I hope you find this useful. And of course, as I said previously, they take effect next Thursday. Actually, they're sort of already in effect because you have at least one item tonight on your agenda that is a study session on a project that will be coming back to you later for approval under these new regulations. So all the analysis in that staff report is based on these new regulations. So you now have a couple of months to read and memorize this document before your April meeting. And that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Any questions? Thanks, Charlie. Okay, our first public hearing tonight is Escuela Bilingue Internacional pedestrian path.
I have to announce a conflict, so I will recuse myself from this agenda item. Thank you.
And I as well. And so I will be excusing myself from this agenda item as well as ECCL, which is within the radius for my residence.
Is it really?
Previously, the city attorney
Oh, okay.
notified me of that.
All right.
So
Stephen has to actually leave the room, and Kyrie gets to stay.
correct.
That's because Commissioner Steinberg has a interest in a business that has had business with Escuela Bilingue, whereas Commissioner Tan, it involves her residence.
Private property, yes.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Our first item today is a general plan amendment to remove the existing pedestrian path between 45th and 47th Street, which is located on the eastern property line of Escuela Bilingue International, or EBI. So the path in the general plan is indicated right here. It gets reproduced in the pedestrian bicycle plan, and it's known as the P9. So if you were to approve this item tonight, and the council would have to also approve it, then these two lines would be eliminated from the general plan as well as the pedestrian bicycle plan. The staff report also talks about various other associations in both the documents which refer to these two to this path, and they would also be eliminated as a result if this item gets approved. So, as you may recall, EBI was to design and construct this path as a condition of approval of their use permit a few years ago, and the PC and the Planning Commission decision of the path was appealed. As a part of the consideration of the appeal of this path design, the City Council directed staff to initiate a general plan amendment to delete this path. The reason to initiate this action was based on concerns about safety and potential potential security reasons for the path to attract criminal activity. If the path is deleted, then EBI will need to redesign the site plan and also provide some pedestrian improvements in lieu of the path. All of these changes will require yours as well as City Council approval. So if this does go ahead, then EBI will need to return to you because the site plan will be modified, and they will, at that time, you'll be presenting some pedestrian improvements which they will propose in lieu of this path. This item was reviewed by the BPAC committee. Their recommendation was a denial by 4-2 vote. The committee on the whole felt that the path needed to be retained in order to benefit the greater good. They understood that there might be some security issues for adjacent neighbors, but one had to look at the greater good that this path would provide. You would find on your dais a number of emails that were received between today and yesterday, and I counted them to be 10 as of an hour ago. These are all in support of the path. You will also find an extensive comment letter from Commissioner Moss, who could not be here. And he also, he does not support the elimination of this path either. And he writes extensively as to why, and he feels that the findings cannot be made, and he's also included a recommendation, a resolution for denial, which is part of his comment letter. So that's all that we have received in terms of comments on this item. Our recommendation to you is that you recommend to the City Council to approve this amendment to the general plan and the associated changes to the pedestrian and bicycle plan to delete the path connecting 45th Street and 47th Street along the eastern property line of the EBI site. The EBI applicants are here. They're not planning, obviously, to present any presentation, but they're here for any questions that you may have.
Chair Coomerly,
Yes.
I have a couple of things to add to Miru's comments. I would note that Laura Cami, the chair of the BPAC, is also here and can speak on the BPAC's action. I also just want to alert you to something that's in your staff report, but just to underscore a kind of a anomaly of state law. That's the only situation that I'm aware of where this exists, which is the state law on general plan amendments says that a planning commission must make a recommendation on the amendment before it goes forward to the City Council for their consideration, and the recommendation of the planning commission must be by a majority of the total membership of the commission. So it doesn't matter how many commissioners are present and voting, it must be by an affirmative vote of the total of a majority of the total membership. That means 4. So unless 4 people vote in favor of this, technically it won't be approved. If, as an example, you have a 3-to-1 vote with 1 person voting no and 3 voting yes, technically that's not sufficient to fulfill the requirements of the state law, so the resolution could not be approved, but we would forward it to the City Council and we would advise them of that in the staff report, that technically under state law you did not make a recommendation, because obviously you wouldn't have enough votes to vote the other way either, but that a majority did vote a certain way. So I just want to let you know that you may, at the end of this, you may think you approved it, but actually you might not.
Okay. Well, I would actually like to hear from the BPAC if they would come forward and just give just a little rundown of your the process that you came to this
Scott and I weren't at the BPAC meeting. Scott
to your vote.
He would have voted to not let them take the path.
Okay.
Voted the same way, so that would have made it 6-2.
Okay. All right, I'm Laura McCamey. I am the current chair of the Emeryville BPAC. And I am speaking somewhat for the BPAC and also for myself. I have very strong feelings about this. and I was just informed by a BPAC member who wasn't there that 2 members who weren't present would have voted against removing this, against this resolution, and so it would have been 6-2 if they had been present at this meeting. My concern about this, and this also relates to the ECACL item that I think is coming up later on the agenda, is that I went to the general planning meetings that the city had, these very nice meetings where a bunch of residents and city council and staff came and talked about what kind of Emeryville we wanted to see. And one thing that came out over and over is we wanted a fine-grained and walkable city. And what I'm seeing from what's coming up with these projects is we want a fine-grained and walkable city, but not in my backyard. And I feel like what's happening, what is the potential to happen is that general plan gets picked apart one path at a time, and we end up with the same sort of gerrymandered, blocked off street Emeryville we've always had. And I'm really concerned about that. I want to say a couple other things, and I also want to say that I think there's an issue here about how does the city make decisions. Do we decide based on the concerns? I'm not saying we shouldn't take concerns of neighbors into consideration, of course we should, but do we decide an issue that is for the benefit of the entire community based on the concerns of a minority of people, a couple of people who live nearby something? If we keep doing that, I think that is going to keep us sort of stuck in, where are we going to cite these improvements that aren't going to irritate somebody? Somebody is going to be mad no matter what the city does. And I hope that you and the council members after you will sort of stand up for what the majority of residents said they wanted in the general plan, which is this fine-grained and walkable city. And I think this path is part of it. It's a big block. It's a connection in the middle of the block. I think it's an important connection. The other thing I want to say is that I think the concerns about crime are based to some degree on an Emeryville that is fading into the past. Even in the 8 years I've lived here, and I live on the other side of San Pablo, I live very close to Oakland, used to be a lot of prostitution, and there's less and less of that. And I think projects like EBBI are turning Emeryville into the new Emeryville that is not as crime-ridden as the old one. And I don't necessarily think that pedestrian paths lead to more crime. And I'm going to tell you that on the Doyle Street bicycle ped path, my partner and I stopped a crime. And we wouldn't have if we'd been in our cars. We wouldn't have heard the woman screaming. It wasn't a stranger crime. It was an assault by somebody that this woman knew. But we were there on our bikes, and pedestrians were there, and neighbors were there, and that person was chased away, and the police were there within minutes. And I think that path increased the safety of the residents because we were there to stop it. And I'm hopeful that this path will increase the safety of the neighbors because people will be walking their dogs, they will be out there, it'll be eyes on the neighborhood. So that's I think I've covered what we said in the BPAC. So thank you.
Thank you. I would like to open the public hearing. Everyone who wants to come up, you need to sign in over at this clipboard right here, and you will each have 3 minutes to speak. And you can, if there's a lot of people, you can pre-sign up and wait in line. Otherwise, we'll now open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item?
Yeah, I'm a member of the BPAC, and I wasn't at the BPAC meeting when this was voted on, so I would have been one of I would have added my vote to the 4 that said that we should retain this path. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the 4 of you really don't have any choice here. You have to vote to protect our general plan, in my opinion. And the reason is along the lines of what Laura was saying. Our general plan is pretty unique in that it was extraordinarily democratically vetted. As a matter of fact, the plan won an award for having had such a large percentage of the city take part in the formulation of the general plan. As a matter of fact, it was more than 25% of Emeryville residents took part in the scoping sessions to formulate our general plan. So there's no way any reasonable person could say that this plan was not democratically vetted. So the people, you can say, you can quantify this, and you can demonstrably prove that the people of Emeryville want this path. Now, as Laura said, there's a couple of people that don't want it. But whenever you try to do anything in the world, there's always going to be some people that don't want it. And so you just have to you have to try to work with those people and try to mollify their concerns, but you have to move forward with, what the democracy or what the majority is asking for here. I think, especially since it's such a lopsided majority that want this path. And then I just wanted to say one other thing here. The Emeryville keeps getting into trouble with this sort of public amenity because there seems to be an incapability among sort of the power elite to say no to developers. Now, clearly the way out of this crime concern, this legitimate crime concern that the appellants to this had, the fact that the path jogs and they're concerned about criminal activity, cops can't see where the jog is, that's a legitimate concern. Clearly the best way to have stopped that was to make a straight path. But the problem was that EBI school didn't want to do that because they would have to give up a little bit of square footage on the east side if you had straightened out the path. So in Emeryville, if a developer or a business, especially a well-connected business, doesn't want something, well, it tends to not happen. So the straightening of the path was never seriously considered. Had we been a better city and been had an idea like that, been able to see the light of day, perhaps these people that are concerned about crime on this path, the neighbors, wouldn't have had that concern because it would have been a straight path, the cops could see down it. So we basically screwed ourselves by this pro-developer, pro-business mentality among the power elite here. And what can we do? I don't know if we can go back now and make a straight path through there and get rid of the jog, but I think we should if we can. And I think that you should move forward and don't amend the general plan like this. It's not advisable. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Hello, I'm Eric Gascoigne. I live right across the street on 45th Street where the pathway was going to be put in. I would have loved to see the pathway to be straight. That would have been nice, but couldn't do it. But we asked for gates to be locked at nighttime, so at least we're not going to have people in there in the middle of the night doing, who knows what. During the daytime, with the path open, it's safe. Everything's going to be fine. So I do have a problem with the way everything started. This is probably like my 4th or 5th time coming down here just about for the one project for the EBI school. I wish everything could have been kind of thought out right from the beginning, talked to neighbors, everything ironed out, before the school even got in there. Now we're kind of left with, a pathway, that could be dangerous, no gates on at night. I would like to see the pathway still go in, but instead of amending the general plan the way you guys want to do it right now, I think you should amend it and say that you should have gates for if a pedestrian pathway is next to a residential house. Out in the middle of the grocery store, it's fine. Let it be open all night. But when it's right next to residential homes, it's a big problem. The other thing is if you end up revoking or deleting it from the plan, the whole pathway, then I'd like you to reopen up EBI's conditional use permit because this is a big chunk of money, and everyone knew about this pathway. EBI is providing it, but the neighbors around there have bared a lot of the burden that happens with the school. Like for example, my house, inside my house, I hear the kids screaming with all my windows closed, my doors closed, and it comes right into my house. And people have told me, "Oh, I'll get used to it," and I'm not getting used to it. So I wish you guys could have kind of thought things out. Like if you decide to delete it, why not build a sound wall then? Protect people who were there before. It'd be just like if you guys would have put in a manure company right there, and there'd be poop smell everywhere. It'd be the same thing. Why do I have to bear the burden? That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on the item? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. So, anyone have any thoughts or comments?
Definitely.
John?
Yeah. So this is a really tough one. I think I've been a planning commissioner for about 5 years now, and for me, this is probably one of the tougher things that I've faced because I don't see a good solution to the whole situation. I voted against the path when it came through for approval because I was very concerned about the safety concerns. I don't think it's possible to do a good path here with the current design. And I also was very active in the general plan, and I'm an active pedestrian. It's like that's my primary my favorite mode of travel. And I appreciate any little shortcut that I can get, and I really appreciate what we're trying to do with breaking up the mega blocks. But I have to look at this one as being practical, and this isn't black and white. This is like such a gray thing to deal with, balancing a lot of different things. And I struggled with it a long time, but ultimately what I came up with is I think the best solution is to delete this from the general plan. And that's a rough thing for me to come to terms with. But I look at the position of the path where it's at on the street, and does it really get you that much by shortening the walking distance 200 feet, if that's what it is? So I don't know that this path gets you all that much. What I'd like to see in its place is do something fantastic on San Pablo to make that pedestrian experience really wonderful. Trees enliven the area, nice wide sidewalks that kids can walk their bikes on to get to the different streets. But I do support deleting this from the general plan, and that's a very, very tough thing for me to come up with.
Well, I have to agree with John. I also voted against this. I think the path is so close to San Pablo and an extremely long block that it doesn't really serve very much. If it were in the middle of the block, I would agree with it. But it's only 100 feet or so from San Pablo. And to me, it just doesn't make any sense. I'm a little surprised that one of the people that spoke in favor of the path tonight lives in the Artist Co-op and was adamantly opposed to a path along the Artist Co-op.
It wasn't. That's untrue. Not true.
Please.
It's totally that's a fabrication.
Brian,
In favor of that path.
stop.
It's untrue. You're out of order.
You are out of order, sir.
I understand that. It's untrue.
So that's my feeling. I'm not a supporter of this path.
I think that, John, you stated very, very well what my feelings are. It's been really a difficult decision, but I don't think that this path can be designed in a safe way. I think that it is really close to San Pablo. San Pablo Avenue is designated as a pedestrian priority zone. It's designated, that whole strip is designated as an area where we should be focusing pedestrian improvements to make it a nicer place to walk, a nicer place to be. And for that reason, I would rather see the efforts put into the San Pablo Avenue frontage. If it were actually in the mid-block, if it were somewhere that cut that long block in half, the weight would come down in a different place. But given the fact that there is an absolute blind 90-degree, probably 40-foot long jog in that, I just can't, my safety concerns are really, I find them really compelling.
I'm right along the lines with everyone else. I'm very disheartened that the general plan is being dismantled in this instance, and at the same time, with the design of the path as it stands and the jog in it, it is unsafe, and I also agree with John and Gail that if we can get some really wonderful improvements on San Pablo, that may enliven the street and bring it back up to a more pedestrian-friendly situation. And if it was further back in the block, it would make more sense to keep it. So that's...
I also want to say that as EBI is building up and accommodating more students, there's going to be more building, and the path is going to be even less visible from either end or from San Pablo Avenue. So that's an additional concern.
It is it's a sorry thing that the real estate jogs there, and it would take up so much to keep going, and that's not the way the path was designed, and fortunately we're stuck with what we have at this point. So
I move that we recommend that the city council approve the amendment.
I'll second that.
okay, take the roll.
Ready for the
please.
roll call?
Yeah.
All right. Commissioner Donaldson,
Aye.
Commissioner Sherman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Cardoza,
Aye.
Chair Coomerly.
Aye.
4 ayes, the resolution is approved.
Well, our second public hearing is, oddly enough, almost a very similar situation with the Emeryville Center of Community Life
I hope he's watching.
pedestrian and bicycle path. Rue, take it away.
So we need
Oh,
Commissioner Steinberg.
that's right, Commissioner Steinberg.
I assume he's
Can
downstairs.
Can come back, come back.
Come upstairs. Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
So while we are waiting, I would like to direct your attention to the emails we have received on this item. We have 4 emails, and all 4 of them are in support of deleting this path. And all of them are from our residents of Emeryville Village.
And I'll just reiterate what I said on the previous item. Again, under state law, a majority of the full membership of the commission must vote in favor to pass this resolution. So that means 4 of the 5 of you, at a minimum, must vote in favor for this resolution to pass.
Okay, so this is a bicycle and pedestrian path that connects 47th and 53rd Street, and it is on the western property line of the Emory Secondary School. And this is the graphic from the general plan, and the same one is reproduced in the pedestrian bicycle plan and is known as P4. In December of last year, the City Council directed staff also to initiate this path. And there were 2 reasons that were identified. One was that there is limited distance between the pool facility, which is in the school, and the Emeryville Village. And in order to build this path, the deck that is adjacent to the pool would need to be minimized, or would need to take property from the Emeryville Village parcel. The second issue was that the Emeryville Village residents had expressed concerns at various workshops that were held in conjunction with the ECCL project, and they were concerned about potential crime activities, noise intrusions from the path, vandalism, and security issues, pretty much the kind of issues that we heard about in the last item. This too went to BPAC, and the BPAC unanimously recommended that that the proposal for the GPA be denied. Again, they felt that the path should be retained in order to benefit the greater good of the community. In addition, they suggested that the path that be designed so that the southern portion, the northern portion, I think this is a mistake, the northern portion was narrowed, which is the portion between the pool and Emeryville Village. If that is narrowed, then the existing space between the pool and the property would not need to be changed, and the deck next to the pool would be retained. And then what they felt that in the northern portion, that would be a little bit narrow. It's about 4 feet at this point, and then it would taper out for the remainder of the path. And so although the portion of the path would not meet the Caltrans Class 1 bicycle path standards, the remainder of the path would. And what this does, it has advantage of not impacting the existing pool deck, and it has the advantage of not having to take property from the East Bay Village folks. So this is a video of the path that we're talking about, where it's narrow and it needs to retain that. Let's see if this works. There you go. So it sort of gives you the idea of, so the pool would be on the right-hand side. So this is roughly 4 feet. And then you're walking the other way. Okay, so I guess you get the picture. So that concludes my, oops, I'm in a rush here, am I? Sorry. So that concludes my presentation. We are recommending that you recommend to the City Council to approve this amendment along with the associated changes in the bike and ped plan as well as the general plan.
So, Miru, there's been no design of this path at all?
No.
Do you know, or maybe BPAC knows, for Class 1, how wide it needs to be?
I think it's
I
8
can
foot
answer that.
minimum.
I believe the minimum Caltrans standard for Class 1 is 8 feet of pavement and then 2 feet of unpaved shoulder. So it's a total of 12 feet.
So we have Cindy from Community Services to represent both the ECCL project, and I believe we have some residents from the East Bay Village as well.
And again, we have Laura McCamey from the BPAC as well.
All right, let's hear from the ECCL first.
So I'm Cindy Montero, Community Services Director. I went to the Bike and Pedestrian Committee and just expressed my concern about if we were to have to widen that path at the pool end, that it would be a safety issue. It would take up a lot of our deck space, and if we were having an emergency at the pool and we would have to board somebody, there would not be enough space on that side to do that. So that was my main concern about if we were going to widen it. I think their suggestion was to have a pinch point there and to just leave it as the 4 feet, so.
Okay. Rob, you want to come up?
Good evening, Commissioners. I could also mention that if you noticed in the video, when the camera turned around and kind of came back, headed south towards 47th Street, you're looking at another large fenced enclosure at the end there. It's not a clear shot out to 47th Street. There's a very large existing emergency generator that sits there because the gymnasium itself serves as the community emergency shelter area. And so that generator is fueled and is able to keep the gymnasium going if all the power in the city is not available. That entire setup would also have to be relocated, so there would be significant expenditures involved in that as well.
One question. The gymnasium is staying in this first phase, is that correct? Or
The
is
gymnasium stays permanently.
Permanently.
And we're rebuilding and renovating the existing gym and also the pool area.
Okay.
Just for the record, that's Roy Miller, the school district's architect.
Well, we heard from BPAC, but would you like to?
Thank you, Laura McCamey, again, Chair of the BPAC. And to me, you can see that the BPAC was even more unanimous in wanting to keep this path. I agree that it's not ideal to have a pinch point, but I think we felt that we would rather, we certainly understood the safety concerns around the pool, and we would rather have a non-ideal path than no path at all. And I've been very concerned about bicycle and pedestrian access to ECCL as this design process has been happening. And one of the things that happened turning 47th Street into a bike boulevard, I think was a really good move because it directs bike traffic across the street right into ECCL. But once you get in there, it's hard to get out, hard to figure out how to get out as a bicycle and a pedestrian. And this just gives much easier access out of the ECCL complex. And I think there's a consideration here is how do we want people to get to ECCL? If this is a center of community life, do we want everyone to have to drive there? Do we want kids to have to walk on San Pablo, which I hope will be a better environment in the future, but right now is a pretty unwalkable, unfriendly place. Wouldn't it be nicer if kids didn't have to go out in traffic, if kids and seniors and people of all ages could have someplace that's off-road and easier access to get into ECCL? If we really want to make it a center of community life, let's let the community have as many ways as possible to get in. I think this path is really important, and I understand there are design challenges, but I hope that those can be overcome. Thanks.
Thank you. So this being a public hearing, we will open it. Please come forward. If you have anything to comment on, you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you. And please sign in.
I'll do that after.
After, yeah.
My name is April Atencio. I'm a member of Doyle Street Co-Housing. I'm also a member of Rural Residents United for Livable Emeryville, although that's for identification purposes only. This is my opinion. I would really like to see this bike path still happen. I think the design stuff could be worked around. I would kind of ditto what Laura said, but also I just want to address the concerns about like the safety stuff. I just feel I'm of the mindset that more eyes make a safer place. So the more people you have going through and the more vibrant you make this area, the less that's going to be happening. I mean, I think we've told the story of when we were going down a bike path up on the Greenway, Doyle Street Greenway, and we actually on our bikes actually caught someone doing something. Some guy was hitting on his ex-girlfriend, and we actually helped stop it because we were going through there. And so more eyes make a safe place. So I just want to say that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Chairperson Vanessa, members of the commission, staff, audience, did you all get a copy of my wife's email? I don't think there's any sense going through all the items on that one more time, but I can tell you that I've lived in Emeryville Village for 31 years. I'm an original owner, and during that 31 years, we've had nothing but problems with people on the high school side of the fence. And I don't see where having this path will make any difference. It'll probably just make it worse. There's a number of people here from, excuse me, can't talk tonight, from Emeryville Village. If you'd like to hear from them, we have the president of our board of directors, Kim. We have Matt. We have my wife. Robin is here, although she thinks it ought to be a path. It's just been a horrible problem forever. And having the path as a bicycle pedestrian is not going to improve anything. You've already heard from Cindy and staff how it narrows down to nothing. I don't think you can even walk a bicycle through there. You may be able to push one. And it also begins in Oakland, and it doesn't start in Emeryville. John may remember when I spoke out many, many times against the 53rd Street, which is all in Oakland, and the path, and et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think it's a good idea, and I hope that you'll approve the general plan amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hello, my name is Matt Johnson. I live at Emeryville Village, and I think this path is going to be detrimental to Emeryville Village and won't be any benefit to anyone. I can't see people coming from 53rd to 47th. I think they'll come up Horton or Hollis, up 47th, or across San Pablo, down 47th. It's just a path to nowhere, and it's going to cause tremendous problems for Emeryville Village. As Jim already mentioned, there's a long history of problems in that area, and this is just going to make it worse. So I hope you'll agree to remove this path. Thanks.
Thank you.
I like the staff produced video, just a very scary looking video, made it look really scary. And so I sort of would remind the staff that you should be try to be a little more objective when you give information to the decision makers. Instead of pushing your agenda so like flagrantly like that, I just think you're doing a disservice. It was a scary looking video, made it look like it's too narrow, claustrophobic, and I think that was done. You're being played here with that video. I don't appreciate that. I don't think the staff should be engaged in that sort of subjectivity. I think it should be trying to be more objective. But what's not being talked about really here tonight is the idea that we can widen the path and maybe a little bit, maybe not to 8 feet, but a little bit, and take some of the pool deck away, which is copious. I don't know if anybody's been to that pool. I've been there many times. It's huge. I would have to estimate. I'm a builder, so 25 feet of pool deck probably. How about let's give them 22 feet of pool deck? And of course they don't want to shrink their pool deck because they see that as a pejorative thing, a negative thing. But they're not being team players here because not everybody is works for the center of community life. Some of us are residents and we bike and we walk, and this town should not just be for the center of community life. We should be making accommodation for all users. So the fact that they're trying to take shrinking down the pool deck off the table of discussion is just that's just an agenda they're pushing because it's something they would like to do. But I think you should ask them about that. Well, how about shrinking down a little bit more? Why can't you work with us on this? And I think it's just because they're being obstinate, frankly. Okay, then Mr. Miller talked about how there's expenditures with moving the generator. Now, this project's going to cost over $100 million to move a generator, so we can retain and not have to modify our general plan and cheapen our general plan is nothing. This is a huge project, and to move a generator is the fact that he's sort of implying that this is like a bridge too far, I think is absurd. I think that's ridiculous. Furthermore, we're not necessarily building a class 1 bicycle path here, as Mr. Bryant told you what the parameters are. We're building a bicycle pedestrian path, not a class 1 bicycle path. And then the last thing I wanted to say about this, the idea of removing this path, is that if you read the general plan, which I presume you have, you'll know that this path is in, the general plan calls for this area right there around this school, a pedestrian priority zone. Pedestrian priority. Now, it's kind of ironic if you guys vote here tonight to remove a pedestrian amenity in a pedestrian priority zone that the general plan calls out.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Come on up.
I somewhat agree with Mr. Donahue. It's a shame that the pathways are...
Come up to the mic a little bit more.
It's a shame that the pathways are being deleted. They're supposed to be there, but the problem is that before you even start the projects, you should be looking into how it all fits, and not doing it right at the last minute where everything's already, the drawings are done and everything else is ready to go. And then you say, oh, well, we can't have this pathway, and so let's just get rid of it. So I would say that all these pathways should be in there, but you guys got to make them fit, and that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Remember to sign in, please.
Good evening. My name is Kim Kurata. I am president currently of the Emeryville Village HOA. I'm not here representing all of our homeowners. I'm here as an independent. And as much as I like walking paths and bike paths, I just don't think that particular location is the most ideal. It doesn't make sense. In the evening, I would think it's going to cause a lot of problems for security reasons. During the day, I would think it would be causing some problems for the school, and I don't think that's an ideal position to have the bike and a pedestrian walkway. We have Spur Alley just a few yards further down, and I know I use that quite often, and I don't understand why we're spending millions of dollars to build yet another pathway when we already have something that's existing. And it just, to me, it seems redundant. So I just want to make that clean.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. What do you think, Stephen? Start on this end.
I'd like to hear more about improving this connection point, because it sounds like people really want to keep it, but perhaps it's a little bit unsafe in certain minds, but I think we can rectify that. I really, based on what I've heard and seen in person, I don't think if we take a few feet out of the pool deck as recommended by another gentleman and put it into a pathway which is more friendly, more inviting. I also agree the eyes on the street, the Jane Jacobs method of really keeping control through the community. But I think a pathway should be the last thing we delete. Now, if it's not perfectly designed, perhaps we can improve that. I think that's within our jurisdiction.
I think that there are some issues with the path in the sense that right now it does sort of go from nowhere to nowhere. On the south side, there's not much of a destination there. However, it's not designed, it hasn't been vetted. The path was in the general plan all through the ECCL design process and was left out apparently somehow. So I think it's premature to delete it from the general plan.
So I agree with Gail. This was one of the things that I brought up at the 2 study sessions for the ECCL, that I'm really kind of disappointed that the design hasn't really been incorporated. We haven't really addressed the North Street where there's a conflict between bikes and cars, and I think about the bike ride that I regularly do through Berkeley. I go down Rose Street, and I find throughout Berkeley, the people the cars are really, really cautious and careful and try and cooperate with bikes. But boy, when I get around the schools, when they're letting out, it's like parents behaving badly. It's like people cutting out in front of you. It's like car doors slamming in front of you, kids walking in front of you. So we don't have is that 53rd Street, the north side? Yeah. We don't have that designed, and it's like somebody said, it's like you're kind of ignoring things until the end, and then it's like this is kind of an afterthought, and it shouldn't be an afterthought, especially at a school, that we need to provide every means of access for kids and paths to provide access to this thing, and I think this is truly a critical path to get people safely there, to maybe resolve some of the conflicts that are inherent on 53rd Street. So I definitely do not support taking this out of the general plan. I think we can make it work somehow. And also, just to offer an observation about the safety and the fears of the neighbors is the greenway. I look at the greenway, which is a pedestrian path, and I was walking that on Sunday, coming back from Berkeley Bowl, and there was an open house. And I was amazed at the crowd that house was gathering because we have this great amenity, this pedestrian path that's there. I don't think paths are something to be feared if we can design them safely, if there's clear access across, and especially at a school. And the other thing that we should look at too is the other path that's shown on the same block that connects to Spur Alley. Somebody said about Spur Alley as a parallel path. Well, it's a parallel path, but it doesn't really do anything for the school. It's like that's another thing that should be considered as far as the whole plan for the school. And I really think that's been ignored, and we have to address it, and we have to make use of these things. So I definitely do not support taking this out of the general plan.
Well, I think that, once again, this path really goes from the Oakland border to the backside of a bus yard. And that as far as access to the school is concerned, the school can have gates adjacent to both ends of this path to allow students into the campus from either side, so that they don't really need to cross. Now, compared to the Greenway, I don't think makes too much sense. The Greenway has large multi-story condominiums on either side of it. So there are a lot of windows on that path. It's quite wide and it's landscape. This path will not be at the same scale. And as a consequence, I don't support it.
I do not want to take this out of the general plan. I think it is important, and here is our opportunity to design it correctly. I think Mr. Donahue had a point about that. I'm not sure about the pool deck, whether it needs it. How big? Could you? I'm sorry. Could you come on back up, Cindy? I had a quick question about that 6 foot. What is it now?
I'm sorry.
Thanks,
say it
Roy.
again.
The pool deck that's adjacent to the pedestrian path. How wide is it now?
I honestly didn't bring those plans with me. I don't want to give you a wrong number. My information on the safety aspects of that pool deck has really come from the Community Services Division. So I assume that they're looking at that and have made their judgments about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It is not a huge pool deck, so I do understand their safety concerns.
That is just one side of it, so thank you. So, there's possibility of moving it in 2 feet. The rest of the path is 12 foot wide. If there are eyes on the path by having the chain link fence that's open, there's a possibility that one could put tempered glass on the pool deck area, which would make it completely open. And I think that the possibility of moving the transformer and the gas generator is an option too. And here's where we can make sure we get this right. So I would not support removing this from the general plan. Are there any other comments? We need a motion. I would make a motion to deny this resolution.
I second the motion.
Take the roll, please.
Okay, so the motion is not to approve the resolution recommending that the City Council approve the general plan amendment. Commissioner Donaldson.
I'm voting whichever way I have to
Okay.
vote to say keep
To
it
vote
keep it in the plan.
A yes vote means you support the motion, which is
Then
against
no.
the general plan
No.
amendment. No.
I vote no.
No, no.
I
No,
think
wait,
I think you want to vote yes.
I vote yes.
A,
Okay.
a yes
I
vote
to keep
means
it-
you support
reject.
keeping it in the general plan.
That's it.
Okay. Commissioner Sherman.
Yes.
Commissioner Steinberg.
Yes.
Vice Chair Cardoza
No.
and Chair Coomerly.
Aye.
4 ayes, 1 no. The motion passes. The resolution does not pass. We will forward your recommendation to the City Council to not delete this path from the general plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. No, yes.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Thanks for everyone for coming out. Our next item on the agenda is the AT&T Blackdot wireless extension. Harley.
Good evening, Commissioners. Before you, you have an application to extend an application that was approved October 2011. This is for the AT&T wireless site at what's commonly known as the water tower property. The property is located along Powell Street between Doyle and Beaudry and adjacent to Stanford Park. The building sits here in the northeast corner, the water tower in the northwest corner, and currently the water tower does have equipment, antennas, etc. on it already, and the equipment shelters for those antennas are in this back area to the south of the building. These are pictures of the site as it is today. As you can see, the antennas do already line up along the legs of the water tower. And these are photos mostly west from the outside of the property and then the same direction, showing the existing trash enclosure, which on the rear has equipment. These are images from the plans that were approved, showing the plan view of the water tower. This image only shows the proposed antennas, not the existing. So there would be 4 on these 2 structures, I guess you could call it, and then 2 each on these 2. And this is just a reminder that was also in your staff report that a condition of approval from the original approval required that these structures are curved to match the curve of the water tower. The 2 structures that have 4 on them are at the kind of bottom of the water tower, whereas these 2 structures are down the legs, so they would not curve. And this shows an elevation where the 4 proposed are up near the top, and then the 2 sections are down here. These are the existing that are not involved in this application. And then the shelter. What exists currently is this wall here with this equipment shown here, and this is the trash enclosure. What's proposed is this drawing where an entire new shelter is constructed. The trash enclosure is bumped out 1, and that's what requires the removal of a parking spot, which is what requires the variance. So again, this is the layout. There are 2 AC units on this rear area that I'm told are very quiet. There's a ivy-colored covered fence here blocking a view of any of these from the park, the trash enclosure, and the new equipment shelter here. This is all to the south of the building. And here are some renderings showing what this would look like. From the street, the trash enclosure would bump out, and looking in from the parking lot, you can see it moves forward. And here are some renderings of the proposed equipment on the water tower. You can see the antenna equipment here and here. So there are 3 findings required to approve an extension. They are that the permit holder has clearly documented that has made a good faith effort to commence work upon the use. This applicant, AT&T, was in talks about a merger with another company, and all permits were put on hold while those talks went forward. That merger did not take place, and now all of the permits are being re-examined. The applicant is ready to move forward with a building permit and installing the equipment if this extension is approved. The second finding is that it is in the best interest of the city to extend the permit. This facility, like all cell facilities, will improve the reception quality of people using the AT&T network. That's what these facilities do. And there are no substantial changes to the project and no new information requiring secret review. That is the case here. There is no new information to provide and no new review required. Therefore, staff recommends approval of this extension of the design review and variance applications. I'm happy to answer any questions. And Jimmy Stillman, representing AT&T, is also here for any questions you might have.
So is the resolution include the curved 4?
The resolution would be
two-
for the conditions of approval as they are, which includes those.
That's right. Okay, yes. Thank you. Just want to make sure.
Any other questions? Okay.
Would the applicant like to, there's no new changes. So.
Yeah, good evening, Ms. Kimberly and members of the commission. As Ms. Cassidy mentioned, I do represent AT&T, and I don't really have anything to add. I think the staff report was very well written, and this is just kind of a continuation due to a circumstance that happened when T-Mobile and AT&T were in talks to kind of merge networks. And then again, as you may know, that merger did not happen. When that merger was taking place, most of the majority of cell sites were put on hold to kind of see what was flushed out of that. And now that it didn't happen, they're interested in going back and moving forward with many of these new site builds to bring the city of Emeryville, its residents and business owners, kind of seamless coverage and enhanced capacity, which this site will provide. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer anything or provide any clarity or give you any details about the project.
Does anyone have any questions? No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a public hearing, so is there anyone who would like to come forward and speak on this item?
Okay, just a few moments ago, Vice Commissioner Cardoza, Buzz Cardoza, Lawrence Buzz Cardoza, he just slandered me when he said that I had spoken out against a bike path near the Artists Cooperative where I live. So now I'm giving Mr. Cardoza a chance to tell everybody here assembled here and the television audience.
Brian, is this about
This is about
this item?
the water tower here. It's poetically connected to the water tower. So I'm offering Mr. Cardoza a chance. You can tell everybody, Buzz, where you get your information, because I'm telling you that's patently false, and I would know because I'm in favor of the path you're talking about. It's a mid-block connection between Horton and Holden, right next to the Artist Co-op. So here we go. Now, tell us where you heard that.
This item is not on the agenda at this time.
No, this is poetically connected to the item on the agenda. Yes, it is. So, Mr. Cardoza, you have 1 minute to tell the people here where you got this information.
This is not the time.
Yeah.
This is the time. This is poetically connected to the water tower issue. Mr. Cardoza, could you please tell the television audience where you heard that I'm against this Artist Cooperative bicycle pedestrian path? Could you please tell everybody this? Since you chose to slander me, could you please tell the television audience that, Mr. Cardoza?
Brian, you are welcome to state whatever you want to state.
I'm waiting for Mr. Cardoza. I've used 1 minute and 34 seconds.
And
so, Mr. Cardoza, with my remaining time, Mr. Cardoza, I'm going to be silent. And that's poetry. I'm poetically having a pause. Whereby I'm thinking about this item on the agenda, and so I want to have a pause, and that's part of my comment.
And while he's pausing, I will remind the commission
But you're not
that
supposed to.
during
I don't want you to interrupt me, please. I'm speaking now. It's my time to speak. The Brown Act allows me 3 minutes to speak. I don't want Mr. Gina to interrupt me.
So
I want silent. Okay, stop the clock.
The commission isn't required to respond to the public comments.
That's
it's
true.
Just to take in the comments. So you're not required to respond.
That's true, but I appreciate you. Please don't interrupt me. Now I'll start the clock again.
Yep. Go for it.
Waiting for Mr. Cardoza.
I am not required to.
You're not required to respond.
Not required. If you choose, tell everybody where you heard this. Mr. Cardoza thinks it's entertaining and humorous. It's fun. I guess it's fun to commit to slander somebody. I don't think it's fun, but I guess Mr. Cardoza does think that.
I'm waiting for the AT&T part.
Okay, that's 3 minutes. Mr. Cardoza lied when he told everybody that.
Thanks, Brian. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
I'd like to move approval.
Second.
Okay. Any objections?
The second was who? Sorry.
Gail?
Gail.
Okay. No objections.
So it's 6-0. The extension is approved. This decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is the massage use at Andante. Harley.
Good evening again.
Thanks.
Stuff here.
So first, let me call attention to an email that we received with pertaining comments. It's an email from Winifred Arbeiter, I believe is the name, and it has two comments, one on item A and one on item D, which is this item here. So I just wanted to say that's on the dais for you. This also was an item that was missing a few pages. There were 2 pages of the original Andante conditions of approval, page 18 and 19, that should be in that supplemental packet that you received.
Harley, do you have an extra copy? Somehow it's
Absolutely.
lost. I cannot find it. Just the email. Just this one. Thank you very much.
Sorry, there are also a copy or 2 here at the corner if anyone needs them. So before you, for this item is a proposed massage use at Andante, and this is for Unit G on San Pablo on the ground floor. I'll show you where it is, and then we'll talk about why this is before you. So Andante is at the corner of, or on 40th between San Pablo and Adeline, and the proposed use is around here. If you're familiar with Andante, storefront Miozen is at the 40th and San Pablo corner, and then along San Pablo there are a number of units. Most of the way down there is a path under Building 2 that connects into the inner courtyards, and Unit G is just north of that path. So there's another little section of, I believe, commercial units in Building 3 here. That's not where this is. It's right before the path here. So just for a little more clarity, this is the path through. Unit G is here on San Pablo. This site plan also shows the parking garage. The upper floors are for residents. The first 2 floors are shared parking for the commercial tenants and their customers. The entrance is here. And when I visited this, I did note that there were no control gates or need for a validation ticket of any sort. So the reason this is before you, the current code and in a week, new code, new planning regulations, both allow this use by right. No parking would be required under the current code, and the new code, given that the space is under 1,500 square feet, would also not require any parking. However, the Andante conditions of approval do allow personal services, excepting massage services, which it requires Planning Commission approval for. That's why we're here. So this review is a zoning compliance review. This is something I normally do at the counter, over the counter as part of a business license. However, referring to the conditions of approval, I discovered this needed to travel to you. So if you find that this use is compatible with the performance standards in the conditions of approval, you'll approve this zoning compliance review. And just as a note, massage services in Emeryville are required to get a separate permit from the police. This allows them to do inspections at the site, and then as well, there's a state requirement that every masseuse have a license. And the applicant has a license and does understand this requirement and expects it of anyone that they hire. So these are the performance standards in the conditions of approval. The first, that adequate parking that meets the requirements of the conditions of approval and the Emeryville Municipal Code. Staff feels that the Andante garage provides this parking. There are 2 floors of public parking. When I visited on a weeknight, a little more than half were occupied, but again, I will note that there are no gates, so I suspect that some perhaps residents, perhaps members of the public are using this parking, as many of the commercial spaces on San Pablo are not currently occupied. So that's what leads to that suspicion. The second performance standard is that the use, a compatibility of the proposed use with current uses with respect to noise, odor, vibration, glare, number of other similar uses, hours, location to residential uses, security or policing concerns, and other potential nuisance concerns. Staff does feel that this use is compatible with the existing residential and commercial uses. It has very little impact on the neighborhood other than being a new business in a vacant spot and providing more vitality to the area. And again, this business will be required to comply with the EMC code that speaks to massage establishments. So that's, staff is not considering is allowing the police department to be in charge of security concerns in that manner. Given that those performance standards are met, staff recommends approval of this zoning compliance review, subject to the existing conditions of approval for Andante and the massage establishment ordinance. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Yeah, what are the hours proposed?
Let me reference my.
I think it was 10 to 10.
I believe it is 10 to 10. Yes, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Thank you.
I believe that's daily. Any other questions?
No, thanks, Harley.
Okay. The applicant, Yudun Feng, is here to answer any questions that you may have as well.
Please come forward and tell us about your establishment that you'd like to build.
California state license.
Go ahead and pull the microphone.
Oh, sorry. I'm a masseuse. I had a California license. I've been working this business for like about 2 years only, but I love my job. I have some customers from San Francisco. Usually I live in San Francisco, so they recommend me to come in Emeryville, open a business. The customers say there's no massage store they cannot find at Emeryville. That's why I come in here. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Are there any questions? Nope. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is a public hearing, so we will open it. Is there anyone wishing to come speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public hearing. Anyone have any thoughts?
I'd
Motion?
like to move that we approve.
I have one question.
Have a question.
Has the police department approved this yet?
Harley, has the police department approved this yet?
Approved it? No. I believe the police permit is required before they get their business license, as is this approval here.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
You need to come to the
come on
microphone.
up to the microphone.
Usually I went to the business license department.
Speak right in the microphone. There you go.
I went to the business license department. I asked the lady who issued the business license, and she asked me if I had state license. I said yes, and then he said maybe it's approved already, the police department.
Okay.
Because we before we get the license, they have to check our background, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I still need to go there to get some permit or not, because some city they need it, some city not.
I'm sure you can talk to staff and figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I didn't go there yet because I don't know if I can open or not.
Sure.
But if they
Sure.
can, yeah. If
Yeah.
I prove there, then I will
And
go
one thing
there.
at a time.
Huh?
One thing at a time.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just
Well,
to clarify,
this is
the
a-
police license is definitely required.
Okay. Great. This is a zoning compliance issue, so this is what we're looking at here. So I would say this certainly is
You have a
within the
motion to
zoning.
approve.
Oh, do we?
Yes.
No, well, I'll second it
Yes.
then. Sorry, Steve.
I move that we approve this use permit yeah.
Yeah.
It's a zoning compliance review, actually, under an existing use permit.
Yes.
Okay.
Is any objection?
Chair Coomerly seconds? Okay.
Yes, she did.
Shall we,
Guess we're all in
Without
agreement.
objection?
Without objection.
No objections.
Great.
All right, 6 ayes. This zoning compliance review is approved, and this decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.
Okay. Welcome to Emeryville. Thank you. Okay. We're going to move on to a study session about 3800 San Pablo Ave. It's a mixed-use project, including the Maz building, as it once was. Maru, take it away.
Good evening again. So this is a study session to review a proposal to reuse the existing Maz building. We are calling it now 3800 San Pablo Mixed Use, and I'm sure the applicant will come up with a little bit better, more imaginative name at a later date. So the site is located, as you can see, at the intersection of 39th Street, Adeline, San Pablo, and Apgar. It is partially in Oakland. The graphic will tell you where the line goes, the boundary line goes. It's about a little over an acre. 75% is in Emeryville, and the remainder is in Oakland. To clarify this project, unlike some of the other projects which have shared boundaries with both Emeryville and Oakland, Oakland has decided to cede jurisdiction completely to Emeryville. We have a signed letter to that effect. Therefore, all planning entitlements as well as building permits will be issued by City of Emeryville. Oakland Planning Department and Building Department will be given a chance to look at the plans at each stage and provide comments to us. And the only time that the Oakland would be involved is when it comes to public improvements, and that's when they might need some coordination between the two cities. Otherwise, this is, as far as we are concerned, an Emeryville project. So the plans in front of you are very preliminary. They are sort of telling you how the site is going to work. Not too much work has been done regarding the design. The idea was to get input from the community, and I'll talk about that a little later, and as well, of course, to get input from the commission. So just to orient yourself, this is West MacArthur, Apgar right here, 39th Adeline, and this is roughly the footprint of the existing building. This is, of course, the revised site plan, which is kind of been rectangled off to create a parking lot. So what's going to happen is that the existing building is going to be reused for commercial uses. And the existing building is about 25,000 square feet. And the new construction will occur in the existing surface parking lot, and what will occur is 100 for-rent units over a 100-space parking garage. The way the circulation is going to work is, so the parking garage is here, and the garage entries would be on 39th as well as at Apgar. And so all the parking, both for the residential use as well as the commercial uses, will occur within the parking garage. In terms of the new structure, the 100 units, this is a basic floor plan. Each floor will have about 20 units. The unit mix is half of it is studios, 30 is one bedroom, and 20 are two bedrooms. So this is the sections, which kind of gives you an idea of how the building will mass itself. So you see three levels of parking, and then you have another 5 levels of residential units, and the total height of this structure is 65 feet. Just to make clear that the existing Maz building will remain more or less the way it is in terms of external changes. This is a rough rendering of MacArthur at San Pablo Avenue. So this is the existing Maz building, and this is the new residential component of it. This green area that you see I don't know whether it's Peter here. This is a rain garden that is being proposed by the city in conjunction with some of the grant funding that we have received. And this is getting built with grant funding. The applicant has yet to figure out, it's not yet been designed completely, and I'll show you a graphic of what has been designed so far. So the applicant will need to work with the design of this rain garden in order to ensure that the interface between their building and this rain garden is a smooth one, and that they can use this rain garden for their benefit. And as you'll see in staff comments, there'll be some conditions of approval regarding their contribution to this rain garden as well. So there you go. This is the concept that we have for the rain garden. It's still not, it's very draft at this point. So this project will fall under the new zoning regulations. So all the analysis, like Charlie had mentioned earlier today, are in accordance with the new regulations that will go into effect, well, next week, in a week, right? So the land use, this is in a mixed use with residential south zoning district with a neighborhood retail overlay. The proposed uses, which are commercial uses and multi-unit residential uses. The residential is allowed by right in this zoning district. A lot of commercial uses are also allowed by right in this district. The applicant will talk a little bit more about the type of tenants that they are looking for, but at this point, there is no determination of what exactly the commercial uses are going to be. In terms of residential density, what is allowed is 85 units per acre. The bonus density is 100 units per acre. The proposed density is 91 units per acre. So this means that it means two things. It will require a conditional use permit, and it will need to provide public benefits to the which would be worth 40 bonus points. And I'll talk a little bit more about the bonus points. So in order to get a residential density of 91 units per acre, they will need to provide benefits worth 40 bonus points. Height, 55 is allowed by right, and it can be increased to 75 with bonus. Proposed, that's not correct. Proposed is 65 feet. So it will require a conditional use permit, and for height, for the type of height that they are proposing, they need to provide 50 bonus points worth of public benefits. In terms of floor area ratio, what is allowed is 2.0, which can be increased to 3 with bonus. What they are proposing is 2.52, so this 2 will require bonus points as well as a use permit. And the bonus point needed for floor area ratio is 52. Now, talking about a bit about the bonus point, I kind of outlined different bonus points that they need for height, density, and FAR. However, the way the regulations are, we don't add them up. We look at the category in which they need the maximum. So in this case, it is 52 points. So there, they need to qualify for 52 bonus points in order to meet their proposal as designed today. So 65 feet height, for 2.52 FAR, and for, I believe, 91 acres per unit residential density, they need to provide us with public benefits worth 52 points. So that is essentially what this says. Now, one of the categories for bonus points is reuse of significant buildings. Mass is considered a significant building, and they are reusing it, and therefore this itself qualifies them for 35 bonus units. So they will need to provide additional 17 points. The applicant has, at this point, identified some potential sources of bonus points, and I'm going to go through them at this right now. They mentioned that the commercial uses are located within the neighborhood retail overlay zone, and in the way to qualify in this category is to provide retail, commercials, amenities in a neighborhood residential zone. And in order to do that, we need to see what kind of floor plans that they provide. So for example, if they need to provide spaces which have adequate ceiling height as well as depth, because in the past we have run into problems with spaces which are too small for the kind of uses that we are trying to promote. So at this point, we don't know whether this is possible or not, but it is certainly, depending on the tenants they find and what they do, it is a potential. They also hope to exceed the California Energy Code by 10%. And this will allow them, I had calculated, and if they do this, then this will give them another 10 points by exceeding it by 10%. And if they do decide to qualify under this category, then it will become a condition of approval, and it will be verified whether they indeed do that during the building permit plan check. So like I said, this will give them 10 points, so they're still short too at this point. The other category that they have identified is the transit. Okay, I'm blanking on TDM. This is embarrassing.
Transportation demand
Thank
management.
you. Transportation demand management. They have ideas regarding bicycle sharing, bike lockers, showers, an ATM machine. Again, it is more details are needed in order to determine whether this will make it to the bar or not. They're also thinking about public art, and this would be in addition to the public art that any project is required. And again, we would need to see more details before we can make a determination. And public parking, this is a little bit complicated. Staff is not clear on how the project can qualify in this category. So once the project develops and they come up with more details, then I would be most happy to work with them to figure out whether they can qualify under this category or not. But at this point of the project development, I don't see how it will. Public improvements, again, this is in addition to any public improvements that we would normally ask as part of project entitlement of the project of this size. So this is something that once the final application comes in, is something that we will need to make a determination. Talking about parking. In addition to being in a neighborhood retail overlay zone, it is also in the transit hub overlay zone. And this overlay allows the possibility of eliminating all required parking to zero with a conditional use permit. So something you need to keep that in mind. So in terms of the required residential parking, that's the numbers, 55 plus 13. Now, just so that all of us are learning the new code, in the TH zone, it allows two things. All required parking automatically is reduced to half. So for example, they have 100 units, and if it is one parking to one unit, that would be 100 parking spaces. But because it is in the transit hub, it would be reduced to half. So therefore, the required parking is half of what would be in some other zone which is not in the transit hub. And the second thing that the transit hub overlay allows is that even after reduction of the parking, if the applicant wants, they can say that they are not going to provide any parking, and then you would have to make certain findings for that. But that's not what they're doing at this point. They are providing parking. So the required is 55 for the residential plus 13 guests, and they're proposing 50. The required commercial, we can't quite determine this because we don't know the kind of commercial uses that they are proposing at this time. Because, for example, retail is different from restaurant, which is different from office. So they're thinking of a number of things, and I'm sure Rick will talk a lot more about that. But at this point, we can't quite determine what the parking would be. But they are proposing 50 commercial parking spaces. So the parking will need to be worked out in one form or the other. In terms of bike parking, the residential bike parking, what is required is 3 short-term and 100 long-term or secured parking spaces. They are proposing 100 secure parking spaces. Again, this is a preliminary plan. They don't quite show it in their site plan, but of course, they have it in their mind to propose 100 parking spaces. So somewhere they have it figured it out. There are other site development standards in our new code regarding open space, loading, landscaping, recycling. These are more detail-oriented. We, at this point, cannot assess the project's compliance to this. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention, as well as, of course, to the attention of the applicant. The project was reviewed by staff, and some of the comments that were made was, completion of plans, what it needs to include, and what is missing, and some of the things were like the existing facades, which ones are going to be modified, if any, identify trees which are existing, and if any are being removed. By Public Works staff stated that the overhead utility wires along Adeline and 39th frontage will need to be undergrounded. They will also need to contribute $50,000 towards star intersection improvements. This was a condition of approval for also another project in the vicinity, the 39th and Adeline project, which is still alive. It still has valid entitlements. So if they do come in, their condition would apply. And earlier, at least Gail would remember, who was here in the San Pablo MacArthur project, the former site of Golden Gate Lock and Key site. When that was entitled, they were also, one of the conditions of approval was also a contribution towards star intersection. And if I recollect correctly, I think it was double this amount. They will also need to be responsible for the maintenance of the rain garden. The rain gardens, the grant funding allows maintenance for the first 2 years, but not after that. So as this project will directly benefit from that amenity, this would be one of the conditions of approval regarding maintaining the rain garden in perpetuity after the first 2 years.
Can I ask a quick question? What is the contribution based on? Because you said the lock and key was twice this contribution towards the star intersection. What is that number figure?
I'm going to let Charlie answer that question.
Sorry, Charlie.
It was based on what we thought we needed, I guess I'd say. The star intersection improvements that we have now got grant funding for from the Safe Routes to Transit grant will not pay for landscaping. So the medians, if there's median extensions as a part of that, which there are, they would just be concrete unless we could get some other money for landscaping. So we're thinking that some of this contribution could be used for that.
Okay, thanks.
A comment was made that the site may need to be remediated, and if that is the case, that there is some funding available from the Economic Development Department for remediation. If any restaurant is proposed, then the on-site grease interceptor will need to be underground. The comment was made regarding that the public plaza at Adeline and 39th need to be better developed. I mean, to that extent, the whole design needs to be more flushed out. This is, at this point, very preliminary. And the idea was to get input from the commission on the kind of materials they want to see, the kind of design they want to see. So the community meeting was held a couple of days ago. A couple of you were present. I believe Commissioner Moss and Commissioner Sherman were present, as well as council members Asher, Davis, and West.
And Commissioner Cardoza.
And Commissioner Cardoza. And about 30 people attended the meeting. There were a number of questions regarding, if the project was going to have sustainable features, the timeline of the project, one of the suggestion was, or a comment was, that it would be ideal to secure an anchor tenant for the commercial uses first, before getting too deep into the project. There were a comment regarding that more family-oriented units were needed. Another comment regarding that in terms of location, in terms of the way the building, commercial spaces, it could make good spaces for musicians to meet and gather or use. It was a good place for a large restaurant, and there was actually quite a bit, as it turned out, discussion on that something needs to be done about crime in that area. In terms of environmental review, we will request a traffic report be prepared, and as well as visual simulations once the final design is drawn up. And then after that, we will determine whether it qualifies for an infill exemption or not. We believe that it should, but we do need this information before we can make that determination. So in terms of permits required, conditional use permit for height, density, and floor area ratio, and depending on what commercial uses end up going, it may also require a conditional use permit for that. And of course, design review for new construction. In terms of issues to be considered in front of you from where staff and applicant is trying to get input is the parking. The project does not provide adequate on-site residential parking. And parking can be reduced, like I mentioned, or eliminated completely with a use permit. And if they do request for elimination of parking, then the findings that need to be made are that the use includes measures to encourage bicycling, walking, and transit use, and that the reduction or elimination of parking will not result in parking impacts on adjacent uses due to overflow parking. So parking will be, depending on how they figure it out, and if they stay to providing 100 parking spaces, and if they decide on sticking to 100 parking spaces and sticking to the same amount of square footage, then they will be short of parking. And in that case, that is allowed by the use permit, provided that these findings can be made by the commission. So we are requesting that you give us direction regarding whether a parking reduction would be considered, and if so, under what circumstances. The second is the bonus. Like I'd mentioned, it requires bonus points, and the applicant has identified possible bonus points. So staff seeks any direction regarding a commission's preference for bonus categories. And the unit mix, like I mentioned, the unit mix is 50 studios and 31 bedroom and 22 bedroom, and whether the commission is okay with this unit mix. So our recommendation is to provide a comment on these three issues, and of course any other issues that you may deem fit. The applicant naturally has a presentation, so if you don't have any questions from me, then I'll shift it over to them.
Good. Everybody good? Thanks, Maru. Would the applicant please come up and tell us about your project?
Do you see yours? Where is? Oops, sorry. So which one? Is it the PowerPoint?
Yeah, no, not the PowerPoint. Let's do the PDF.
So as they are getting ready, I'd like to bring your attention to a letter by email by Mr. Stephen Keller. He apologizes for the late delay I got it a couple of hours ago, but it's there. And he provides some possibilities for design for you and the applicant to consider.
Okay. Like when it works.
All right. Commissioners, my name is Rick Holliday, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to get before you in a study session. I have been active in real estate development for actually 35 years. I went to Cal a long time ago from 71 to 77, studied planning, and spent the first 10 years of my career developing affordable housing. I was one of the founders of Eden Housing in Hayward and one of the founders of Bridge Housing in San Francisco, and I serve on the board of Bridge Housing. So have a lot of knowledge and background in affordable housing and the like. 1988, I started what is now Holiday Development. My wife, Nancy, is a business partner. She's here tonight, and we've been married almost 40 years. And she's been active in our business the last 20. What I want to do tonight is take you through some of my thinking about how I got to the Maz building. And for those of you who don't know, we do have a history in Emeryville that does go back about 15 years on 2 different developments. And I would say that of the 35 years I've been in business and the 30-plus cities I've worked in, I find Emeryville to be one of the most refreshing places to work, primarily because we can have conversations like we're going to have tonight. Oftentimes cities like to play a little bit of a game of gotcha with people that are in my shoes, and it can be frustrating and challenging. In the 2 projects we did in Emeryville that I'll just give you a couple of slides on, we got the benefit of a meeting like this, and we were able to work through a lot of the more complicated issues that each of the projects demanded. We were able to get the projects financed and built, and I think for those of you who know them, I'll show them, I think we got a good result for us and for the city. And we'd like to do the same here because we see a big opportunity at the Maz building. So with that, I'll go through about 15 images. Most of them will be a little more on the historical, on the contextual side, and tell you a little bit about how we see our property in relation to your property that you have an RFP out for now for the affordable housing. And then I'd like to let Kevin Wilcock from David Baker's office spend a little more time on the thoughts we have at this point on the design. But as Miru said, I'd like to get some of your thoughts around the big issues that she raised in her presentation. So with that, many of you know the building. Obviously, you've probably seen it a lot, probably driven by it. It's a great building, but it's been sitting there waiting for an idea and a reuse. I know from seeing some of the plans that have been considered for it, there were some plans perhaps to put a platform on top of it and cover about 40,000 feet on top of the Maz building with a concrete platform that would allow for housing to sit on top. And I know that may have come before you. But when we looked at it, and we've looked at a lot of buildings, and a lot of our history has been taking buildings in areas that are ready for change and bringing them back to life and animating them. We decided let's not fight this building. Let's take what its real power is and make the building special, and then build something adjacent to the building that will be powerful and worthwhile. We did the same thing with the Emeryville warehouse, and I'll go through some of that. I said I married my wife Nancy 40 years ago. She's here. I'd just like to point her out. And many people get in development through sort of odd channels, but Nancy and I physically built our house in Oakland for about $100,000 in 1980. And it was when I was at Eden Housing. I was interested in affordable housing and owner-built housing. And I say that because we borrowed all that equity in the house to start the business, which is now Holiday Development. And our idea in 1988 when I formed the company was south of Market, was derelict, underutilized, and really could use some creative input. So we went and struck our flag there when South Park was full of drug dealing and a lot of empty buildings. And it was a good business plan, and we got a good start. These 2 buildings represent about, for today's world, about $100 million of development that we leveraged off of a small loan against our house. What happens in this business is you don't necessarily make a lot of money in your early projects. You have to prove you can make money for the people who put all the money up, because given our start, we had to raise, in effect, almost 100% of the capital. But we were able to prove that you could adaptively reuse buildings and take areas that were underutilized and ready for change and make a big difference. So we have a lot of pride in our south of Market Experience. In fact, now the clock tower, which is to the left, is having its 20th anniversary this year, and the residents have invited us back for a 20th anniversary party that I hope some of you will read about. We did some other work in San Francisco that is relevant to the Maz building, so I want to just spend a moment on it. We did a building at 1000 Van Ness in 1998 that involved taking a historic building on Van Ness and O'Farrell that had been an old Cadillac dealership, auto-oriented. It's called the Donnelly Building. And it had just been sitting there. And City of San Francisco had been trying to get mixed-use development on Van Ness. Had a pretty ambitious plan. And we got in and we worked with some commercial partners, and we were able to get movie theaters, 14-screen theaters, housing, retail, health facility, some restaurants, and a pretty substantial parking garage to support the theaters. This is the building in section. I've showed it to you today because what we did is very much like our concept with the Maz building. If you look at the building to the right in that section, or my right, might be on your, is you see a garage that's dug down pretty deep, and then there's movie theaters above it. And then to the left, there's a break in the historic building. It was the circulation. The area that's purple is 55 residential units, and then there was a health club in the retail below. It's a very complicated building. But what we did is we had a very interesting, derelict historic building sitting next to a vacant parking lot, which is exactly what's going on at Maz. And what we did is we were able to, a lot of people have done a lot of different developments that weren't very feasible. We were able to get a lot of the seismic strength that we needed in the historic building by putting this building next to it and actually tying in and doing some creative work with structure. So some of that will actually take place in Maz, but Maz seismic retrofit, quite honestly, is not terribly challenging, which is a good thing for all of us. This is a building you all may know. It's how we really got our start here. It was the old Emeryville warehouse that in 1998 was derelict. It was housing a handful of interesting artisans, actually, some nice people, and but it was mainly just sort of sleepy storage. And the city had just approved the Kaiser hospital across the street. This is actually before Pixar, and there were some pressures to get more housing to balance the job growth here. So we were asked by the building owner, who was a friend, by the way, the last name was Friend, the Friend family, to take a look at this and see if we couldn't convert it to housing. So we came in and we sat down with the then Claudia Capio, who was in Charlie Bryant's shoes, and your planning commission, and had a work session much like this. It was actually around a table down at the former City Hall before, because the City Hall hadn't moved here as yet. And there was something called the Park Avenue Historic District that was an ambitious plan that had been proposed. And we were the first development to sort of take and activate and animate the Park Avenue District. And I think there are a lot of similarities in the Maz building, because I think that if we're able to work with you on that San Pablo section and that interesting intersection in your property and the property that I believe the permit just got extended at 39th and Apgar, I think we have an opportunity to really start to change this part of the town and get a significant shot into that portion of your city. As you can see, it was we had to build a garage adjacent to a historic building, which is what we're proposing tonight. We had to make the garage kind of go away, so those who've seen the Emeryville warehouse, you don't really see a big garage, but we were able to hide it. In that building, we did do one-to-one parking, and I know we'll have probably a conversation about what's the proper ratio, but it was a long time ago before people were willing to start to accept bicycle transit and being closer to public transit. This is the building as it was when it was finishing. I like this sign on the left, because if you see, it says www.elofts.com. And if you remember, we brought this to market around 99, and internet marketing was new, and IKEA wasn't here yet. And so we got most of the leads for the sales from people sitting in that traffic when that freeway was waiting to get cleaned up, and it was pretty amazing. We didn't put the sign up with the phone number until about 6 months after the internet sign was up, and we were able to start a conversation with customers way earlier than you would expect. It was very fun. I mentioned we hid the parking by putting some new construction along Park Avenue that you may have noticed. We did roll-up doors, and there's 6 sort of interesting businesses that have evolved there. There's a lot of conversation back then about the need to activate Park because it was going to be a street. But if you and I were on Park in 1998, there was shopping carts going up and down to the recycling. It's kind of hard to get people excited about opening retail businesses there. Pete's was moving to Emeryville, we knew, and we were trying to get them to put a store in. And they, as you well know, they did locate about a block from us. They had actually bought a loft from Nancy and me in the clock tower, the owners of Pete's, and so I thought that might help. But sadly, we didn't get a coffee shop in the Emeryville warehouse. I think we're going to get one at 3800 though, and something even more substantial. We pioneered a lot of the use of built-in furniture. Again, this before IKEA, but we ended up, Emeryville and Holiday Development ended up as a special of a TV show called The 21st Century Home. And we opened the building in 2000. And some of these things here, they don't photograph as well as I'd like, but we did a lot of interesting stuff with built-in furniture that made the units very livable. We had a remnant piece that was going to be spillover parking for the Emeryville warehouse. It was about 20,000 feet. And we got intrigued by some row homes in Amsterdam. They were 16 feet wide. So we did 20 units on 20,000 feet called Blue Star Corner. And again, we had a work session with your staff and your commission. And we were able to work out some pretty unusual elements of the way we circulated that. But we were able to get over 40 units to the acre, a parking space in every unit, and a very, very interesting outcome. And I think people have been very happy with it. It's the interior. This is a recent project we just finished up in West Oakland. It was an old cannery. I show this to you because the building's pretty marginal and not terribly exciting, but had some decent bones. And we just finished. It's called Pacific Cannery Lofts, 163 units. We finished selling our last unit just last month. As you might guess, selling 163 units in the market we've been in is a little rough, but so we've taken our lumps in some buildings economically, but I think if you go walk that, you say we didn't cut corners, and we have a building we're quite proud of. I noticed you could get points for bicycles, and at the cannery we were ahead of the curve, I think, there. We put in a very robust bike room, and a good friend of Nancy's and mine that we knew from college started the company Backroads Bicycle Touring, based in Berkeley. So we leaned on Tom Hale and put 20 sort of community bikes inside the Emeryville, inside the cannery there, and just said to people, use them, not unlike the way Portland experimented with bike riding. And we don't have that many of them left, which is sad. So people they sort of bleed away. But what it did is it really started getting people to really use their bikes, talk to each other, and we put lockers down there, and it became a part of the community building that was important there. And it taught us that people really will dramatically reduce their use of the car if you make it easier for them to use a bike. On the left, you see Nancy with our dog Jones, who sadly is no longer with us, but we did create something called the Laundromat that I'm extremely proud of, and I know you have one of your stellar businesses here, so I'm proud to present Lauren with our big idea for condominiums. We took a janitor closet that was not terribly needed, and got a sink so that people could get their dogs really clean before they got them back in the unit. For those of you who have a condominium and a dog, and if you take them out to the beach, it costs you about $10 or $15 if you go by PetSmart to get them clean. It's a real pain. So this again became a real interesting community asset where more people have gotten to know each other through the sharing of the dog facility. And we call it the Laundromat, and we think we can maybe trademark that. But we will make this building very, very bike friendly. I think now, sort of more seriously on the right, we have a lot of, there's been a lot of evolution about bikes. I think Emeryville's a forward-leaning city with some of the things you're doing with your zoning code. And I think understanding what's the right parking ratio and what's the way to really get bikes is something we need to get right with your help. This is the interior of some of the units of the cannery. This was an area that was really disinvested. Many of you may know. 400 units are done now, 100 are affordable. 75 million, almost $100 million of new tax basis for West Oakland. And there's 1,000 new residents. And there's a lot of people down there that are getting active in all kinds of the issues related to better schools and better public safety. I threw this in, we're almost there, I'm sorry to do this, but threw this in because the last slide is about the relationship of the 3,800 to your parcel that you have the proposal out for affordable housing. And one of the things that I think we look forward to in this relationship is the ability to work adjacent to affordable housing in a very creative and different manner. And we were invited to work in Walnut Creek about 10 years ago in a site right at the adjacent to what's called the Pleasantville BART stop. And it was a parcel where the city said, county actually said, we want affordable family housing adjacent to market rate housing. So what you see in the sort of red there is what's called Coggins Square Apartments, which Bridge Housing built to 78 family apartments in a good school district with good opportunity for young families to help populate the schools and get a good school system. And then the units in sort of light blue are sort of row-style homes where we took some of the things we'd done south of Market in Emeryville and created an interesting loft-style product that would cater to people that might have a child, but generally more of a younger worker that wanted to use BART. And then the area in between where you see the pool and the play area, we had no fence, and we both contributed to a very well-thought-out area where the two areas were completely indistinguishable, and they're both used by both parties. And I think, I'm going to go back to a minute. I've spent time there because Nancy and I had to live in a unit there for a few months when we were renovating our home. And it was some of my most gratifying experiences as a developer to sit and be at that place and watch the interaction and the interrelationship between the affordable housing and the market rate housing. When you look at the Maz building in your city site and that area where MacArthur kind of goes under, I think that there's just a huge opportunity for these developments to work in concert. So I know you'll be picking, or your staff will be picking, a developer and an architect for that, probably while we're in the next few months, while we're trying to get our plans together. But I look forward to the areas where you see the crossover. And I think that we may be looking to pick up some points, some of our bonus points, and doing some interesting work there to make these developments really work in tandem, and so that people will read this as a really big change to Emeryville. And I think it's probably a smarter way for us to try to contribute to the issue of the unit mix. You may have your own thoughts about that, but we think that can be a big opportunity for us to work well with you and whoever you decide to pick for that. I'm going to ask Kevin to take a few minutes and go through a little bit more of the detail and then see if we can get your thoughts and feedback.
Thanks, Rick. Kevin Wilcock, partner with David Baker and Partners. If we're talking history, I owe a lot to Rick because he was the one who introduced me to my partner Dave about 20 years ago. So we first actually started working together on the Emeryville warehouse down the street, and I actually still own a unit in the Emeryville warehouse. So that's pretty good. And I also worked on Blue Star Corner with Rick. So let's see. I think Miru was peering through the internet at my computer today because a lot of what she showed tonight we're going to see on the screen. So I think we can go through this pretty quick and get to the Q&A. You all know where the site is. I think it's a pretty interesting nexus, crossroads basically, between Berkeley, Oakland, and Emeryville. It's pretty close to a major bus stop intersection a couple blocks away, 15-minute walk to BART, and a bike ride, 11 minutes to Berkeley or Oakland, and about 20 minutes to Berkeley. So, and those are all the bike lanes that surround the site. The context you know about, townhomes next door, potential 100-unit project across the street on 39th there in the upper right-hand corner, senior housing across the street, a lane splitter. These are some images of the building. Just quickly go around the site. And then the back where the parking lot is, and a portion of the building that we're looking at removing to create the rectangular site where we're going to build the new housing. Miru went over the zoning, so we can go through that quickly. Here's the site from an aerial view, and it's 25,000 square foot building. This toned area here is what we're considering removing so we can create a rectangular site for the garage and the housing above. This shows the Oakland-Emeryville line going through the site. And what we typically do, these are three diagrams coming up, actually 4, but this gives you an idea conceptually. The Maz building being a commercial building in the front of the site, creating an active commercial edge around 3 sides of the site. Behind it is the garage with its 2 entries, like Miro said earlier. The lobby is off the rain garden with a flex unit to activate this portion of the facade. And then above, we have 5 stories of housing in a simple double-loaded corridor bar building. We have about 6,000 square feet of open space, believe it or not, in a combination of a plaza, podium decks, private decks, and a roof garden with views of the bay. Miro went through this, the 91 units per acre, the FAR, the height, 65 feet, these requiring the bonus points. And then we have 100 spaces of parking. We're proposing 1 on-street loading space, and then bike parking for residents and guest bike parking. The plan Miro went through, obviously the lobby for the residential is off Apgar, the green rain garden, the commercial with the plaza, the parking with its entrances off 39th and Apgar, a little flex unit to activate the sidewalk edge here. And then the levels of parking with the interior ramps. This is one area for bike parking, this room right here. On the upper floors, we also have bike parking in racks along a widened corridor on each level. What we found, people like to bring their bikes up to the level they live on rather than stored in a room in the garage. So if they're going to do that, we have some secure bike parking on each floor of the building. Solar panels, she mentioned we have to exceed the energy codes by 10%. We typically go to a minimum of 15% beyond Title 24. Then at the top of the building, roof deck and some more solar panels. Here's an image below that gives you an idea of the massing of Maz along San Pablo and then the proposed ground floor lobby, flex unit, and the residential units above in relation to the townhomes next door. We're at 65 feet, and the townhomes are about 36, 38 feet at the ridge of the roof. And then the sections that Miro showed earlier, Maz, and then the garage that's helping to seismically brace Maz, which doesn't need much help to stand on its own, and then the housing above. And then we updated this rendering recently to show the rain garden as it's proposed in the city's plan with the boardwalk crossing through the rain garden. This is just a conceptual plan. We placed some articulation and fenestration balconies. Our next step after we get your feedback on the massing, the program is to start to develop the articulation and mass of the building and bring it back to you. Some of the strategies we'll use is activate the street edge by use of retail, flex spaces like we did in Emeryville, and brightly lit and inviting lobbies. Some of the building facade articulation strategies would be the use of sunshades to minimize solar heat gain, balconies, awnings, green stairs that are full of light and air, and rooftop decks. Just a quick summary, Miro had a long list, but at the community meeting last night, pretty well attended. What we heard, basically 3 points. More local business, brings in more people, brings in more activity, makes a safer neighborhood. Plus, bike parking. So that's it. I'll open the floor. Questions, possibly some good answers.
Any questions right now?
Feedback time.
I'm curious about this half a parking place per unit. Have you done that in other developments?
Yes, we have.
Market rate units?
Yes.
Where?
Yes.
Where?
In San Francisco. And we're one-to-one, like Rick said, down the street at Blue Star Corner and Emeryville.
When we did the clock tower that I showed you earlier, it was 127 units, and we had 94 spaces there. And 40 of the spaces were leased under the Bay Bridge. So we only had, I think, 70 spaces that were covered in the building.
And were those for
Those were
sale
market rate
units?
for sale, yeah, high end. That I was a little worried about. It was 20 years ago. And I think now we're noticing at the Pacific Cannery that bike use is just getting really, really much more serious. I think one of the things we didn't mention that I know we want to do here is that we need to have a really well planned car share. Those work well if you can get 2 or 3 of them in a building this size. And it really, that's the key, I think, to really getting the confidence to drop the parking ratio.
I had another question. In the cannery, what's the ratio of units, size of units, and what's the parking there?
Cannery is 1-to-1.
1-to-1.
Yeah.
And what are the ratio of like studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom?
Well, they're lofts, so there's not really bedrooms, so there's more unit sizes. The units average about 1,000 square feet. Most of them are sort of 1+, I guess. But you can do 2-bedroom units in 1,000 feet pretty easily if you're more conventionally laid out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, this is not a public hearing, but it's a study session. Does anyone from the public wish to come up and comment on anything? No? Seeing none? Take it back. John, you have something to say? You went to the meeting, yes?
Yeah, the meeting was fantastic, and there was a lot of excitement. I think that there's a lot of excitement from everybody that was there, and it's just, to me, it's a project that ticks all the boxes. It's like, it's just really doing the right thing. It's going to be totally transformative with the other stuff that's going on in that neighborhood. I'm really looking forward to seeing it all come together. I have very few comments, really. It's like, I like the idea of what you're doing. I'm fine with the massing. I'm fine with the FAR, fine with the height. It's all very appropriate for this area. Things that I would maybe like you to encourage is the open space that's available to the public it looks like it's fairly limited. You have the pedestrian plaza, so I'd like to see something that does something special with that, perhaps. And maybe you've got really tall ceilings in that space. It's really big. One of the things I was thinking of is like big doors on the front that could open up and create outdoor-indoor space that's kind of shared. I think there's some pretty cool coffee shops that I've been in that kind of do that, and it's like that side of town is much warmer than where I live or on the other side of town. So it's like I think that would be conducive to having that indoor-outdoor space. Another thing is when I look at the rain garden, I think of up in Portland, they've got some really nice parks that they've created along the riverfront area where the high-rises are, a new area that's developing. And they've done some like piers that float above the grasses and things, and might be other opportunities to put some seating in there or something interesting. Definitely encourage the roof garden open space for the residents of the building. I think that could be a wonderful space, and especially if there's views of like the new Bay Bridge and the bay and things like that. Like the idea of the green stair full of light and air. If you could make the staircase so it's shaded but visible from the street. One of the things that I think we could do a better job on our buildings in general is we enclose our staircases so nobody wants to use them and they're just not visible and not inviting. If we could make them so they are visible and inviting, I think that'd be a wonderful thing. Let's see, and then bike parking is one of the things that I would really encourage, especially when you're looking at limiting the parking, and I'm all for limiting the parking. It's like, your market, what you can sell basically. But for me as a biker, I really like I live at PPP, the high rise, and we have a bike locker. So for our 2-person household, we have 2 actual bike lockers where I can wheel my bike in. Everything's fully enclosed. It's locked up. I can leave my helmet, my lights, and everything on the back. So I'd really like you to encourage you to look at bike lockers. I'm not really crazy about bike rooms where everybody has access to different things. And I've seen like just disaster areas, looking into common spaces where they've been bikes, and it's just a mess. So you mentioned the zip car. I think it's a great thing. And then staff is looking for feedback on some things with the parking reductions. Definitely bike lockers, the zip car. This is a fantastic opportunity for AC Transit passes. They've got a killer deal on transit passes when you buy in volume, and I'd like to see that as a permanent thing where it's wrapped into the rental thing, so it doesn't go away. It's like you live in this building, you get a transit pass, and I think that's really, if we can get more people riding AC Transit, we'll get better AC Transit service, and it can really help out the city in a big way. As far as other bonuses for the Heighton thing, I think this functioning as a neighborhood center, it definitely does that. And from the discussion the other night, it's like clearly you have the vision to create a neighborhood center here. So I think that's fantastic. I love the idea of what you're doing for the dogs. Again, living in a high rise where there's more dogs than kids, and it's like, how do you accommodate the dogs? That's an important thing, and it's also, like you said, a social thing to bring people together to build a community. The unit mix, I would like to see some 3 bedrooms, even if it's only 4. I don't think that we should be building housing in Emeryville that doesn't have any 3 bedrooms in it. But I'm, in consideration of what's going across the street, for me, a total of 4 would be a reasonable number for that. I think those might be all my comments, but it looks like a great project.
Yes, I have some comments. So as far as the unit ratio, I was concerned with the number of studios, and as John mentioned, the lack of 3-bedroom units. Although I understand that there's a housing or a family-friendly housing project that's going up or taking place nearby, I still think that it's important to continue to provide family-oriented housing in our residential developments here. So that's something that I would like to see, or at a minimum, that there are provisions for modifying the configuration of some adjacent units to make them larger to accommodate people who have more children or need more space. With regard to the layout of the bike rack parking, I wasn't clear on, I understand what you were saying, that the bike racks are at the end of the hall on the wall, but if they're across from the entrances to the units, I'm not sure how well that would work out. It's not clear on the schematic plan just yet, but that's just something to keep in mind as you're planning the design. Let's see. Originally, I had a question about the west-facing patios, but that was clarified by your presentation. But I did have a concern about the patios that are facing west. They'll have wonderful views, most likely of the San Francisco Bay. However, the view of the roof of the Maz building is kind of a concern to me. Not so much that with regard to the solar panels, but just all of the kind of blank white space. And if there will be an opportunity to look into green roof or something that's more visually pleasing, less glare from a white reflective surface. So that's something that I really would like to see if you're open to exploring. I'd like to see more details on the pedestrian plaza, and that was something that was mentioned. But because it's part of the public feature and part of the open space, I think it's really important to give some thought into how that's going to be developed. And then as far as bonus points, so we've been asked to weigh in terms of our priorities in ranking. For me, it would definitely be public improvements would be my number one item, and then my number two would probably be the energy efficiency. I think it's definitely critical to not just meet the energy standards, but to exceed those. And that also, in part, is a public amenity as well. With regard to the parking, I'd like to explore that with the other commissioners, but I do think that, I'm in favor of reduction in parking in a situation where you have people that are more likely to use public transit and also encourage more use of bicycling around town, especially if there are other commercial amenities that are available to people within walking distance, that they won't necessarily need a car. I think it's nice to be able to provide units that don't necessarily require that someone pay for a parking space, that be part of their purchase. So I think that's all I had.
Well, I think it's a very exciting project, and I'm delighted you're saving the Moz building because it really is a monumental building. I would like you to consider possibly moving the lobby and the flex space into part of the old Moz building at the corner of Adeline and 39th Street. It would give a much more impressive frontage to the residential part of the building, and also it would make the front entrance closer to the transportation hub, which is really on 40th Street between San Pablo and Adeline, and it would be a shorter walk in that case. There's so many vagaries here that it's hard to be very precise about everything, but I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on you to have some 3-bedroom units in this building. That City Council has made that a condition of granting an extension to the building right across the street from you. So that's about all I can say at this time.
I am very excited about this project as well, and I think it'll really be wonderful to continue to activate the star intersection. So I'm hoping this is going to work out wonderfully. I wish you had a few more elevations, say from the north and the east, looking so just to kind of get an idea of what's going on over there. I know it's all very vague at this point. At the same time, I guess I have a couple questions. Could you come on up for a sec? Do you have any commercial tenants lined up at all for the main space, or any ideas about that?
No specific tenants.
Yep.
We did have a lot of conversation about that at the community meeting. Mm-hmm. We've had 3 inquiries from people that would like to do a brew pub. That seemed to be fairly well received, I'd say, at the meeting. We've had a couple of very tentative inquiries from small grocers that are a little bit like the there's a couple of small groceries in Berkeley, one on Gilman, and one in El Cerrito on San Pablo.
Yeah, natural
like
grocery.
Yeah.
Berkeley Natural
Not them per
Grocery.
se. We recently did a project in the Bayview on was a workout. Where we got Fresh and Easy, which is not doing well. It's about a 15,000 square foot store. But we got a fair amount of experience understanding grocers and grocers' needs, and the Pack and Save is going to become a Safeway. You probably know that as well. But I think that part of the city would really like some interesting boutique small grocer, if we could get one there. The co-working space, I think, is a sort of an interesting phenomenon right now. Sort of a blend of a coffee shop, tea, meeting, place to sort of transact and meet people.
That's the flex space you're talking about?
Yeah. There's a place in the city called the Hub that some people have been quite interested in us trying to do something along those lines. I've had a yoga studio, and a woman that has a very interesting physical therapy business that focuses on people with biking and sort of active release technology work on people that are active and sort of it's not rehabilitation therapy, even though she does some of that, but she's got a lot of work she does with the East Bay Bike Coalition and people that are active in biking. So she might be a good tenant. So these are people that are finding us with really nothing happening other than just being an idea. As we get further with the design, I think we're going to be more public in terms of the newspaper about what we want to do here. And I think a lot of people will probably find us. So any thoughts that someone at the public meeting thought we should put an ice cream shop in or try to lure Fentons there, which is, I think, an interesting notion. It might actually be a better location on the other corner, that's the city piece. But I think that would be interesting to get a good ice cream parlor. So we're open for any ideas. Someone thought a music use might work there. But I'll tell you this, I think that this is a really important part of the project for it to succeed. And we would like to have a lot of interesting options and figure out a way to blend them and do it right. Because if this is done properly, the housing's much healthier and better. And the housing really supports the businesses by having some constant stream of activity. And one of the things that we really did here is this area needs more bodies, more eyes on the street, more people coming there, and just needs to be brought to life. And that's something we are good at, and we've been doing that for a long time. So I'm excited by the possibilities here, and we're open and interested in any businesses you may know, or I know a couple council people have sent me emails about people that have inquired with them about possibly wanting to open businesses here. So it's an area where we haven't done anything quite like this, but I'm open to the challenge of trying to make this commercial space very. People want to be more retail than office. We've had different architects' offices interested maybe, but I just think if it's done right, it will be an amazingly powerful building and a gateway to your city.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue then. Thanks. So yeah, I really appreciate that the existing structure is being reused. I like the dog wash station. I love that. And I think that car share is a very important thing that needs to be included. I am, along with John, I think Kyrie too, I think that bike lockers that are lockable need to be included. And I really like that bike fixing station as well. If we're really serious here, people do need a place to stand them up on and fix their bikes. So I think that's would be a lovely thing. In terms of the buildings, the new building and its relation to the existing MAS building, as well as the surrounding or the next door, the units, I am not pleased with the boxiness of it, and even with the balconies, there's more articulation needs to happen inward and outward, and I believe it needs to be stepped or integrated in some better way. I'm wondering if some of the portion of the building that's over the MAS building could if some of the mass could move over to that direction, not all the way. And I also echo Kyrie's concern about the MAS roof being quite an eyesore for the western side residents. In terms of parking, well, let's start with the unit mix. I do not think that the unit mix that you have here is going to be acceptable, and I think we need more 2 and 3 bedroom units. So in terms of parking, that would of course change the parking ratios, and I think adding car share, like I said, would be important. In terms of the bonuses, I think the public improvements would be my top priority, and energy efficiency would be my second, and they are the most important here. And I think that those are my main points. I think the transition between, it's very tall between the MAS building and the adjacent development, and this it needs to integrate much better. So, thank you.
Well, one of the nice things about going after everybody else is that there have been a lot of good comments that I agree with. I also think we need more of a mix of multiple bedroom units, 2 and 3 bedroom units, and that tends to lead me towards not wanting to reduce the parking anymore, certainly because when you get families, you have more need for cars and people to carry around their groceries and stuff. But with a really robust TDM program with the car shares and the bicycles and stuff, I think you should be able to find a good balance that works with that. The public amenities and the public space and the activation of the street frontage, and that seems like what you're really interested in doing, and that's great because that's definitely what's needed over there. And back to these other earlier discussions we've had, that whole San Pablo Avenue corridor is really an unpleasant, it's not a great walking environment now, so anything that can be done to enhance that, make it softer, make it more active, make it more friendly, more eyes on the street would be great, and it seems like that's the direction you're intending to go, so go for it. That's wonderful. I think the MAS building could have a great potential as a green roof, whether it's just a green roof that's a visual amenity to not only the people on the west side of the residential building, but there's going to be other tall buildings around that are looking down on that as well, and there's even the people that are across the street now could have something pleasant to look down on, because no matter what happens, that star intersection is a lot of asphalt, so a lot of asphalt and a great big flat white glary roof is something that could be done to ameliorate that would be really good. That is pretty much what my comments are. I think it's exciting. It would be really great to see more things happening down in that part of town. It's a really key intersection. It's really visible from a lot of different places, and it's the entry to our city, so liven it up.
Well, everyone has said everything I wanted to say. I have a few things that haven't been broached yet, but I'm familiar with your projects. I had a former client, a colleague who was a original buyer at the clock tower, Don Crosby, and you probably know Don, and I went to visit him there. It's a great project. I have a concern about the transition from your project to the existing townhouses to the east, and what that will look like from their perspective. I'm a little concerned and sensitive to their needs as well, and I'm a little afraid of what the shadows might be like, and invasion of privacy and views and all that stuff that the townhouse residents adjacent to your property line will probably want to talk about. I'd love to see this project incorporate public art. I'm a big proponent of art, and I would love to see maybe the ground floor use incorporate a gallery where we can start to have a First Friday walk up and down San Pablo and have it populated with galleries in the future, with you being the catalyst for that art walk in Emeryville, perhaps, in this area. I see art starting to happen on San Pablo. This is a great location for a statement from an artistic point of view. Emeryville is a artist community, a strong artist community, and I'd love to see that celebrated somehow in your project. I don't know the future of our former art gallery that we had here, but perhaps Emeryville wants to be a tenant in your building, and we can have a museum. I'm just throwing it out because we seem to have lost momentum on the art gallery that we were going to have next door, which is really a shame, I think. As far as the roof on the retail portion, how about a dog park? I mean, we can put put some innocuous railing around there, and perhaps it could be a grass area and also be an amenity for the community for their pets, to bring pets up there. Just a thought, because if we're going to attract families, families come with kids. Kids need green space, and kids need dogs. So if you really want to improve the unit count, which I think you want to do 3 bedrooms. It's been a push in the general plan. We want to have more families here. We have to include amenities that will attract families. It's not just the unit mix, but I do agree with my colleagues that we do need some 3-bedroom units. And let's see, the massing, I think that was very sensitive of you to pick that up, and it does stand out. I'm not totally opposed to that. I like variety. But I think your points are well taken as far as the massing, perhaps stepping it or some other configuration, spreading it out amongst the site as opposed to it just coming up and towering over the eastern neighbor. The parking I'm not worried about. The bikes, it's great. You're very bike sensitive. And I applaud you for taking on this project. It's a challenging area, but it needs a catalyst and a maverick, and you seem to be of that bent. So I like the project a lot. Thank you.
I might also just echo what others have said about the green roof on the existing structure. I think that's a fantastic idea, and if there's any way you can make that happen, I think that would be a huge improvement for the project.
The technology on that's getting better and better all the time. It's getting easier to do.
All right. I think we said it all. We really appreciate you coming forward with this project, and we look very much forward to seeing your next iteration.
Yeah,
Questions of us?
I've taken a lot of notes. I think that we're going to be able to take this to another level of specificity pretty quickly. I think a couple of things are in order for me at least to try to address. The issue of the unit mix, I don't want to, I'm hearing it pretty clear, and I've had a lot of conversations with a couple of your council members about it, and I understand the issue clearly from the conversations. The thing that's challenging with a building like this is the first and foremost thing that I saw in this building was the need to activate the Maz building as a great commercial space. If that's all that was done here, which someone could do just by walking in and filing a permit and surface parking, I think it would be a good and worthy project for the city. It'd be a lost opportunity, I think, if you didn't get a garage that could really make that commercial work well and really, really work. And then to not put housing on top would be a real lost opportunity. And I think the unit mix, we definitely will work with that. But I really commend you for wanting more family housing and young families. But 2 of the people that are working on this development have their families have moved not because there aren't 3-bedroom units here, but because there aren't the amenities and the public safety in this small little neighborhood that will change. And it is hard for us to try to meet a social goal, which I understand you're saying, and try to get a project financed and meet all the difficulties we face as we're trying to put pencil to paper. So we will work really well and hard at that unit mix, and I'm hopeful we'll come up with something that is different and better than what you see tonight. But I don't want people to think we can really push pretty far into that direction on this site, because it really starts to compromise, I think, what we're doing to the building. But we do hear that very, very clearly.
And you've done it before. You can do it again.
We can do a lot. In my role at Bridge, it's something that's an important public policy. Bridge has 15,000 units done now, and I'm on the board. We have 35,000 residents, so I don't have anything against family housing at all. It's a big part of what I believe in. But I think that you have to look at different sites and find out what's the best real estate solution for each site, and not necessarily layer a city policy on every site. And I would hope that I can at least have you thinking about this site a little bit more from the context of it being iconic and important to getting active and have that building work commercially and have a really good housing project on top that will have a different unit mix than what you see tonight. So with that, we've written down the ideas, and they're very helpful. So I want to again thank the staff and you as a city for having this conversation with the developer before we get in too deep and feel frustrated. Yeah, so we'll get to work and we'll find out appropriately what the next step is and get more specificity. We'd like to have a project under construction in the fall.
Great.
And so that will mean we'll get working and try and get back to you pretty soon and see if we can get close to where we need to be.
I also wanted to say that the staff's recommendations I thought were very solid and should be considered.
Yeah, I understand. Well, we commend your staff. They're a delight to work with.
Lots of good ideas, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to take a 5-minute break. What do you think? Okay,
Sounds
let's
good.
do that.
We have one more agenda item, right?
We have one more agenda item, and then we're good. So just take one little break.
I was going to see if I can.
Administrative, we have General Plan, Annual Progress Report.
This is something the state requires us to do, and I get to say again that the general plan sets a vision for growth and enhancement of the city. This general plan was adopted in 2009, except the housing element, which was adopted in 2010. And I want to go through the general plan elements and just real quickly talk about what we've done on them this year. So the land use element, we adopted new planning regulations, yay, and construction was completed on a lab restaurant building, a restaurant, a medical office conversion, and began on 4 residential projects and a school expansion. And the Planning Commission approved a warehouse, a path, sign permits, tree removal, and changes to a landscape plan. In terms of transportation, the pedestrian and bicycle plan and the general plan amendment that implements that were adopted. And the Sustainable Transportation Plan was adopted. And we had a transit infrastructure study done that is going to inform the traffic impact fee that you'll see later. The South Bayfront pedestrian bicycle bridge is on hold pending outcome of the lawsuit about redevelopment. In terms of parks and public facilities, the Parks and Recreation Committee was formed. It's going to meet in a couple weeks. The Emeryville Center of Community Life has had some study sessions, and it sounds like they still have more work to do after tonight. The Emeryville Center for the Arts is looking for alternatives to redevelopment. Conservation, safety, and noise. The city is working on safe disposal of a bunch of different kinds of wastes. The new planning regulations address odor, irrigation, light, safety, and noise. And we're participating in regional planning for sea level rise. Urban design, we have the new Shell Mound Street design guidelines. And in sustainability, the police building renovation was designed for LEED Silver and has solar panels and energy efficient windows. And in regional coordination, we've been working on the sustainable community strategy and the countywide transportation plan and Measure B, and the East Bay Green Corridor and the East Bay Development Alliance. The general plan has an action program. And of 79 actions, we worked on 66 last year, and 3 were done before that. 2 are scheduled for later. And the 8 we didn't work on, updating the capital improvements program. Well, our capital improvement program funding is waiting what happens with redevelopment, mostly. The Emeryville Crescent Trail, we didn't want to raise that issue until after the pedestrian and bicycle plan was done. Using sites needed that are not needed by other agencies, we didn't see any come available last year. Community Emergency Response Team Program, our new Alameda County Fire Department contract will include one this year. They'll start doing that this year. The Crescent Trail biotic is going to be done when the Crescent Trail happens. Updating the local hazard mitigation plan, that's going to happen starting this year. Making sure development in high noise areas mitigates the noise. There weren't any projects proposed in high noise areas last year, but it is part of the new planning regulations, those regulations. Identifying sites for farmers markets. We don't have any farmers markets wanting to come here now, but the Community Services Department has been talking with shopping centers about off the grid food truck courts as a possibility. So we'll see where that goes. And then we have Catherine Furpo here to talk about the housing element.
Hi, Catherine Furpo, Housing Coordinator. I want to talk, we do the housing element. We are going to start working on the housing element this year, but this is a report on the previous housing element that is completes in 2014. As far as meeting our goals for the regional housing needs allocation, we have gotten through 78% of that housing element period. Of the allocation, we've met 46% for the very low income, 5% for low income, 21% for moderate income, 90% for market rate income. And overall, of all the units that we were required to build, we've produced 57%. Oops. Which one is it?
Does that include Ambassador?
I'm sorry?
Does that include Ambassador?
It does include Ambassador. It does not include 64th and Christie because they did not get their building permit in 2012. So that's 64th and Christie is 29 units of very low income housing, so that'll up our numbers. The San Pablo sites We have heard tonight that maybe we'll have some building permit in 2013, but the other sites I wouldn't expect to get building permits in 2013. We're too early in the process of development, choosing developers. So there's the Adeline site, which I don't believe, Charlie, that doesn't have any affordable housing in it, does it?
Which project?
The Adeline site, 39th and Adeline?
I don't think so.
No. So because of the Palmer decision, no rental projects are no longer subject to our affordable housing set-aside ordinance.
Sure.
So we're not getting as many, there's several reasons why we're not meeting our RENA numbers, but that is one of the biggest ones. As we go forward, that'll be a really big barrier to us not meeting our RENA numbers, because a lot of what is proposed to be built right now is rental housing. And as I said, they're not subject to our affordable housing set-aside ordinance, so it'll be a lot harder. And we don't have redevelopment funds to supplement, so it's going to be a lot harder to meet our RENA numbers. And the next proposed RENA numbers are actually much higher for Emeryville than what we have now. So you'll see, in the same period of our next housing element, you probably won't see us so high in numbers.
But they also include cover an 8-year period.
They cover an 8-year period,
Whereas
yeah.
this covers a 5-year period.
Right. So
Or 6-year, whatever it
maybe.
And how do we compare with neighboring cities for meeting?
That
our
is a
RENA?
very difficult thing to find out. I've sent ABAG an email asking them to do that. Other cities don't necessarily publish this annual report. I've looked at lots of different websites. The only website I know that has it is Walnut Creek, but for some reason their site was down when I was looking at it, and I keep forgetting to go back to it. The state of California, these are turned into the state of California Housing Community Development, as well as there's another department, right, that we turn it into. The housing element report goes to 2 different departments at the state.
Well, the general plan report, the whole general plan report goes to the State Office of Planning and Research.
Yeah, so neither of those agencies publish these documents, so it's very difficult to find the data. I know that that's an interest of the city council as well, so I've made a request of ABAG to see if we can get some information on how other cities are doing, but so far I haven't gotten any data. The Housing Rehabilitation Program, we did 1 exterior paint grant, 1 minor home repair grant, and 2 accessibility grants. Again, this is another program that was heavily funded by redevelopment. Now we have Cal Home Funds and CDBG, it's all that's left. And so we are continuing this program, but as you can see, the numbers are quite low compared to previous years. Ambassador Housing Development, as you know, is 69 low-income units, 23 of which are 3 bedrooms. It's under construction. 3706 San Pablo, we did a request for family-friendly proposals. We got 9 responses. We're getting through those responses, and we'll be bringing them back to the Housing Committee in April, I believe, or May, with a proposal for choosing the developer and the project. Parkside Affordable Housing Set Aside, we negotiated this in 2012. We had 8 very low-income units and 13 moderate-income units that's under construction. 64th and Christie was negotiated. The affordable housing agreement was negotiated in 2012, but as I said, they didn't get their building permit, so it's not in our numbers. But as far as the housing element report, we do report that we got that document going. It's 29 units of very low-income housing. That's also under construction. I don't think they've pulled their building permit yet, though. Nope. But it must be getting close, I suspect.
Well, they've pulled a permit for the foundation.
Right.
And so that's under construction. They have not pulled the permit yet for the superstructure.
Yeah, so that project will be in our annual report next year, as far as our RENA numbers. The first-time home buyer loans, again, highly impacted by the loss of redevelopment. We've done about $203,000 in mortgage assistance. We've helped 3 moderate-income households and 2 low-income households. Those are sometimes resales of existing units. As far as foreclosure and predatory lending prevention, we've assisted 36 homebuyer program participants to cure defaults. we have lost one unit. We did lose one BMR unit this year. So, shall I finish? Our recommended, the commission actions are to comment on this staff report and to recommend to the City Council approval of the 2012 General Plan Annual Progress Reports for submittal to the State Office of Planning and Research and the State Department of Housing and Community Development.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, Diana. Any comments?
I just have one question. I don't know if it belongs in this report or not. There had been talk of a some sort of program to silence the trains going through.
There has been
I know
talk
it's
of
very
that.
expensive to do it, but
I'm not sure where that stands.
is any action been done on that?
Not that I've heard.
That's not really part of the annual report. I don't recall if we have a general plan policy about that. Don't think we do. There has been some talk about funding something like that through a traffic impact fee
City of
project
Richmond
or
did,
something.
I know.
Oh, yes, I know, they did. Berkeley, I believe, has included it in a traffic impact fee for the West Berkeley area. But I don't believe we've discussed doing that here.
I think we have a project in the countywide transportation plan which might have been funded if Measure B had passed.
I remember seeing it somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where it was. We can find out and get back to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks like it's a long way off.
Yes.
What it requires is quad gates, you know, gates that come down that block the entire street. Either that or you have to have a median so the cars can't cut across and go the other, you know, in the other lane. And I believe most of the crossings in Richmond that have no horns have those features, but some of them don't. And I kind of wonder how they pulled that off.
Well, I don't think we have any questions or couple comments. So thank you so much for preparing that for our city. And
There's a resolution here, right? For the council to approve?
do we have to
Do
do
we
so?
have to move that it?
Okay, I guess there's no resolution, but we would appreciate your affirmative recommendation to the city council.
Absolutely.
Yes, we would
Nice.
give it
A
that.
good job, thorough.
Yeah,
Very good.
Good job. Pass it on.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioner comments for the evening? Well, I think we've done well, and I do believe we'll all see each other in April.
No, we said we will not.
No,
April.
not in March.
Not in March.
Like I said, you have 2 months to read your new regulations, and there will be a quiz on April 25th.
There we go. There will be a quiz. Okay, thank you all. Good night.